Chapter 677. The anxious Terminus 1,000 swords calculated in his heart. Even if he agreed to all of their requests, the remaining 5 minutes would not be enough. It was impossible for him to agree to all of their requests. Therefore, the Terminus 1,000 swords tried his best to maintain his rationality and said to everyone, "I agree to all of your requests. I promise to fulfill all of your requests. Now, get out of my way and come find me after the battle is over." The Terminus 1,000 swords thought that if he satisfied all of their requests, they would obediently get out of his way. However, these people did not show any signs of wanting to leave. One of the old men sneered and said, "Sir, don't treat us like fools. If you don't add us as friends and give us a written contract, we will not leave." The Terminus 1,000 swords almost spat out a mouthful of blood. More than 100 people were asking him for a written contract. He would not be able to leave without 20 minutes. However, he only had less than 3 minutes left. In a moment of desperation, the Terminus 1,000 swords pulled out his sword lady and pointed at the 100 people and said, "All of you, get out of my way. I, the Terminus 1,000 swords, am a man of my words. I will never lie to you. I promise to fulfill all of your requests. Now, get out of my way. Don't blame my sword for being merciless." The gleaming sword, coupled with the Terminus 1,000 swords' ferocious expression, was very intimidating at this moment. Unfortunately, the Terminus 1,000 swords' compromise had the opposite effect. He did not take his threat seriously at all. I was even more convinced that he was not sincere and was just trying to trick me into getting out of his way. How could these people let go of the benefits that were right by their mouths? They surrounded the Terminus 1,000 swords even tighter and showed no signs of wanting to leave. Seeing this scene, a huge wave of anger rushed to the Terminus 1,000 swords' head, causing him to lose his last bit of rationality. With a wave of the long sword in his hand, dozens of heads rolled to the ground. The entire scene instantly fell silent. After 3 or 4 seconds of silence, an old man let out a shocking shout and quickly fled the place. The rest of the people who were not dead seemed to have woken up from a dream and fled. In less than 5 seconds, there was no one around the Terminus 1,000 swords. He could finally drive his bus with peace of mind. However, what was the point? The Terminus 1,000 swords' face darkened as he threw the sword in his hand to the ground and left the game. "Ha ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. In the end, I still ended up killing someone," a member of the audience on the forum said while laughing wildly. "That's right. Furthermore, our Lord Final 10,000 swords killed dozens of people in one go. He's much more powerful than that Guhan. That Guhan only dared to kill one person. Our Lord Final 10,000 swords is more powerful. I'm completely convinced." Another member of the audience also laughed hysterically. "Be reasonable. Put yourself in their shoes. If it were me, I would also kill them. These old fellows are too shameless. How can they be so insatiable? This is a disgrace to the people of Yuzhang City," an audience member said angrily. "Yeah. Seeing this, I almost died of embarrassment. How can you be so shameless?" In fact, this was human nature. Everyone loved to take advantage of others. What angered people the most was that others took advantage of others, but they didn't. If no one took advantage of others, it would be fine. However, if a neighbor or friend took advantage of others, the rest of the people would immediately swarm around them. They wished that everyone could take advantage of them. Otherwise, their thoughts would not be satisfied. They would feel indignant and might even die of depression. However, if everyone took advantage of others, even if they were at a disadvantage, it was also a comfortable thing to do. This was the situation that the Terminus 1,000 swords encountered. Cai Zhongwen was able to take advantage of the Terminus 1,000 swords, and the others were naturally jealous. If they couldn't take advantage of the Central 1,000 swords, they wouldn't feel comfortable for the next few months. This was why everyone surrounded the Terminus 1,000 swords. If they didn't take advantage of the Central 1,000 swords, they wouldn't rest until they took advantage of him. "Brother Terminus, thank you for your hard work." Seeing that the Terminus 1,000 swords came out of the game, Liu Lei immediately greeted him with a smile. He put his arm around the Terminus 1,000 swords' shoulder and said, "Brother, don't be angry. This has nothing to do with your moral character. It's all because these people are too unreasonable. If it were me, I would also want to kill them. Am I right? Yes, you're right. The Terminus Thousand Swords had mixed feelings. It was as if he had overturned a seasoning plate. He looked at Liu Lei's eyes with resentment. He could only say that Liu Lei was right. If he said that Liu Lei was wrong, wouldn't it prove that he was also wrong to kill people? In the end, he had beheaded dozens of people. This mistake was much worse than Guhan's. If he judged Guhan guilty, wouldn't he be even more guilty? After saying that, the Terminus Thousand Swords flicked his sleeves and left. He did not return to his seat and left the judgment hall on his own accord. He was too ashamed to stay there any longer. Liu Lei showed a disdainful smile as he watched Sword Terminator leave. He clapped his hands and said to the audience, "Although the 6 spots have been used up, I can give anyone who wants to come on stage and try again. We pay attention to fairness and openness here, so we must make sure that everyone is convinced. Come on, who else wants to try? Come up to the stage." With the Terminus Thousand Swords as an example, nobody dared to go up and try. After waiting for 2 minutes without a response, Liu Lei nodded at the Xinyu Sword Spirit. The Xinyu Sword Spirit knocked the hammer in his hand and said in a clear voice, "Since no one has any doubts, I will announce the verdict. After a strict trial by the court, it is determined that the swordsman, Guhan, is not." Wait. Just when the Xinyu Sword Spirit was about to announce Guhan's innocence, an old man sitting in the front row finally could not hold it in anymore. He raised his voice and stopped the Xinyu Sword Spirit from pronouncing the verdict. "Oh, isn't this Senior Shi? Does Senior Shi have anything else to say?" the Xinyu Sword Spirit asked. The Senior Shi that the Xinyu Sword Spirit mentioned was the second Emperor Sword Wielder in Yuzhong City, Chen Shuangzhendi's descendant. His name was Shi Jueyuan. He was also the mastermind behind the whole incident and the main driving force. By the way, the third son of the Shi family was his grandson. Seeing his plan fail because of Liu Lei's trick, he did not know that it was all Guhan's idea and that Liu Lei was just following Guhan's plan, and seeing his ally, the Terminus Thousand Swords, flee in panic, he knew that he was in a desperate situation. If he did not think of a way to turn the situation around, not only would he lose this battle, he would also lose control of Yuzhong City. Even if Liu Lei died in the future, Yuzhong City would still fall into the hands of Liu Lei's disciples. His family would not have a good time. There's no other way. I can only use my last resort. In Shi Jueyuan's plan, unless it was absolutely necessary, he could not use the impeachment of the emperor's bloodline to completely shed all pretense of cordiality. However, at this time, Shi Jueyuan had to shed all pretense of cordiality. After saying that, Shi Jueyuan looked at a man next to him. This man was about 40 years old. Although he was dressed very neatly and looked decent, he had a decadent temperament. He was like a pile of soft mud sitting there. He was no different from a useless person. When the man saw Shi Jueyuan looking at him, he couldn't help but shrink back. He lowered his head in fear, and his heart was filled with regret. This man was the current family leader of the heaven-shrouding family. He was also Yi Wenjun's father. 7 or 8 days ago, he had offered the impeachment of the emperor bloodline to Shi Jueyuan in order to re-enter the circle of the emperor sword family. But now, he saw that Shi Jueyuan's plan had been easily resolved by Liu Lei. Instead, it was him who was being slapped in the face. Only then did he realize that he had done the stupidest thing in the world. He had offended Liu Lei, the real ruler of Yuzhong City, for the sake of a little reputation. He didn't know how many times he would be punished. If he could win, then it would be fine. He could get a lot of benefits from Shi Jueyuan. But if the impeachment of the emperor bloodline failed, then he would be useless to Shi Jueyuan. If he offended Liu Lei, then his days would become more and more difficult. Thinking of this, he regretted it. He did not want to initiate the impeachment anymore. Yi Wuiying, could it be that you want to go back on your word? Liu Lei has to leave some face and a way out. But when I, Shi Jueyuan, do things, I never give anyone face or leave a way out. Are you sure you want to offend me? Shi Jueyuan said to Yi Wuiying through voice transmission. When Yi Wuiying heard this, The last bit of courage behind her disappeared. She could only stand up shakily and recall the lines she had memorized. She closed her eyes and said to the judges, Sinew Sword Spirit President, I want, Yi Wooing, family leader Yi wants to take the lead and lead the 4 families to impeach the emperor bloodline. Am I right? Esteemed family leader Yi? Shi Jueyuan saw through Yi Wooing's thoughts and spoke for him. Family leader Yi, is what Senior Shi said true? You want to initiate the impeachment of the emperor bloodline that I've never even heard of? Yes. I want to initiate it. Yi Wooing was about to cry, but he had no choice. Apart from saying that he was right, there was nothing else he could say. What the hell is the impeachment of the emperor bloodline? Lu Yin asked in front of the television. How would I know? Master never told me. Lu Shihua stuck out his tongue. After seeing Ji Yuhan's performance in court, Lu Shihua admired him from the bottom of his heart. This was because Lu Shihua knew that Ji Yuhan was the one who arranged all the plans. He even overheard Liu Lei's conversation, and the content of the conversation was related to this plan. Someone is knocking at the door. Do you want to open the door? Just then, Lu Shihua suddenly heard such a voice coming from the room. It was the voice of the electronic system, which meant that someone was asking to enter the door. At this time, apart from Wen Maiyun, who was injured in bed, and Liu Anna, who was crazy, there were only 2 normal people in the room, Lu Shihua and Lu Yin. Lu Shihua walked to the door and looked at the screen. He found that it was Long Xiaoya standing at the door. Lu Shihua quickly opened the door. Long Xiaoya rushed in and grabbed Lu Shihua's hand. She gasped and said, Sister Shihua, hurry up and come with me. Where are we going? Lu Shihua asked in confusion. We're going to the trial hall now. The master wants you there now. Hurry up, or you'll be late. After that, Long Xiaoya took Lu Shihua and ran away. Chapter 678. Xinyu Sword Spirit finished reading the impeachment materials submitted by Yi Wooing. His expression was unusually serious. Even though he was the chairman of the disciplinary committee, he had never heard of impeachment from emperor bloodline in Yuzhang City. Xinyu Sword Spirit thought about it, stood up, and wanted to hand the materials to Liu Lei. However, Liu Lei waved his hand, indicating for Xinyu Sword Spirit to sit down. The Xinyu Sword Spirit realized that the old chairman didn't look surprised at all. He knew that everything was within the old chairman's calculations again. Xinyu, have you finished reading this impeachment? Shi Jueyuan's expression was gloomy. It wasn't his original intention to take this step, but he had no choice. He could only take this step. Junior has finished reading it. Xinyu Sword Spirit sighed. Family head Yi, family head Shi, family head Liu, family head Lin, family head final. Are you sure you want to start this impeachment? The Liu clan and the Lin clan were the other 2 clan heads who had participated in the impeachment of the imperial bloodline. Their ancestors were sword emperors. How can this be fake? Shi Jueyuan snorted. The other 2 family heads beside him also stood up. They nodded at Xinyu Sword Spirit and said, that's right. As for that old bastard Yang Wanjian, he left first. However, the family seal he stamped on the impeachment letter cannot be faked. There is no need to doubt his attitude. Sinew, what else do you have to doubt? Shi Jueyuan said coldly. I don't dare. Xinyu Sword Spirit threw the materials to the side. He stared at Shi Jueyuan and said helplessly, may I know who you want to impeach, Senior Shi? What do you want to impeach? I don't think this impeachment document is written clearly. I want to impeach your Sword Tower Pavilion Master, Shi Jueyuan said sternly. His answer caused an uproar. Shi Jueyuan actually wanted to impeach the Sword Tower Pavilion Master. Wasn't this Sword Tower Pavilion Master Liu Lei? He actually wanted to impeach the number 1 person in Yuzhang City, the only sword wielder with a celestial sword. Was it time for Yuzhang City to change? Chairman. Xinyu Sword Spirit stood up abruptly, his expression changing drastically as he looked at Liu Lei. Liu Lei smiled faintly and did not speak, as if all of this had nothing to do with him. Elder Shi, may I ask why you wish to impeach the chairman? What mistake did the chairman make? Xin Yu Sword Spirit said coldly. The surrounding crowd also looked at Shi Jueyuan indignantly. The fact that Yuzhang City was able to escape the attack and survive was the result of the battle between Liu Lei and Rocky. They were very grateful for this. They didn't expect that Shi Jueyuan would dare to accuse Liu Lei. They were all furious. Chairman? Our respected chairman Liu Lei? Shi Jueyuan laughed. Xinyu, don't get me wrong. We don't have the guts to impeach President Liu Lei. President Liu Lei's contributions to Yuzhang City are clear to all. How can we impeach him? Humph, didn't you want to impeach the Sword Firmament Pavilion's pavilion master? Isn't this impeaching Chairman Liu Lei? Xin Yu Sword Spirit sat back down stiffly. Hey, Xinyu, don't take it for granted. How do you know that the Sword Tower Master is still Chairman Liu Lei? Shi Jueyuan smiled even more brightly. Nonsense. Who in Yuzhang City doesn't know that Sword Immortal Cloud Sky is both the Sword Tower Master and the chairman of the Sword Committee? Who do you want to impeach? Xin Yu Sword Spirit asked angrily. As the chairman of the Commission for Discipline Inspection, he was not allowed to reveal his emotions during the trial. But now, Xin Yu Sword Spirit had revealed his emotions. Xinyu, you are also a person of status. Go and find out who the current Sword Tower Master is, Shi Jueyuan said with a smile. Xin Yu Sword Spirit was taken aback and immediately opened his personal terminal. Shi Jueyuan said that he was a person of status, not because he was a person of high status, but because Xin Yu Sword Spirit had the right to access some of Yuzhang City's confidential information. Sure enough, when Xin Yu Sword Spirit saw the name of the Sword Pavilion's pavilion master in Yuzhang City's confidential information, he was shocked to find that the current Sword Pavilion's pavilion master was not Liu Lei, but someone called Ji Yuhan. It's you. Xin Yu Sword Spirit looked at Guhan in shock. Guhan nodded and turned to face the audience. He said proudly, that's right. My master has already stepped down from his position as Sword Tower Master. The current Sword Tower Master is not talented, so I'm just an insignificant person. The entire venue was silent for 5 seconds, and then there was a commotion like that of a market. This kind of noise quickly spread from the trial hall to the whole of Yuzhang City. Everyone around the TV who saw this scene opened their mouths wide in surprise. Their mouths were so wide that they could easily put their fists in. What was going on? How did the Sword Tower Master of Yuzhang City suddenly become an 18-year-old young man? What happened in Yuzhang City? Why were they completely kept in the dark? All the audience instantly felt like they had been fooled, including Long Xiaoya and Lu Shihua, who had just arrived at the trial hall. They had just heard what Guhan had just said, and they were so scared that they fell to the ground. They had never imagined that their master and master would be one of the 2 most powerful people in Yuzhang City, the Sword Tower Master. This was a fact that they would never have imagined even if they were killed. Damn! An 18-year-old Sword Tower Pavilion Master. Our great Yuzhang City is indeed awesome, a player wrote in the largest font on the forum. *T, awesome my ass. This is obviously a black box operation. What F** King 18-year-old Sword Tower Master? There must be something fishy going on. I guess this Guhan must be Liu Lei's illegitimate son. F** CK, I can't accept this. Most of the audience had the same attitude. They couldn't accept that the Sword Tower Master was actually an 18-year-old young man. Shi Jueyuan sneered and said, ha ha ha, Ji boy, you finally admitted your identity. Why didn't you admit it earlier? Who would dare to judge the Sword Tower Master of Yuzhang City? As far as I know, you became the Sword Tower Master on the day of the Great Attack. Why didn't the Sword Committee announce it for a whole 17 days? Why didn't you dare to announce your identity as the Sword Tower Master? What an honor it would be. If it were me, I would have rushed to tell everyone on the first day. Shi Jueyuan's words once again caused an uproar. His words woke the audience up. They had just dreamed that they had been deceived for 17 days. During these 17 days, they were like fools. They didn't know that the master of the Sword Pavilion in Yuzhang City had changed. They didn't know that the master of the Sword Pavilion had become a teenager in his early 18s. They felt as if they had been deceived and played. On the forum, everyone instantly cursed Guhan. The 40% support rate for Guhan instantly dropped to less than 10%. People couldn't accept being deceived like fools, and they couldn't accept the fact that they were fools. This was the effect Shi Jueyuan wanted. In fact, he could have exposed Guhan's identity a long time ago, but he had waited until the day of the trial to do so. He wanted to humiliate everyone's intelligence in public and make everyone angry at Guhan. Then, his plan to impeach Guhan would be carried out smoothly. Everyone, this is the matter I want to impeach the Sword Tower Master for. Shi Jueyuan said loudly, Guhan's position as the Sword Tower Master is illegal. It was manipulated behind the scenes. He didn't get the consent of the people of Yuzhang City. Moreover, there was a huge problem with Ji Yuhan's character. He might have his reasons for killing people, but his attitude of looking down on the people was unchanged. As long as he was the Sword Garret's Pavilion Master, the people of Yuzhang City would not be able to live a good life. Therefore, under the leadership of the family head of the Heaven-Covering family, the 4 Emperor Sword families are united to impeach Guhan from being the Sword Tower Master. We demand that Guhan step down and apologize to all the people. Clap, 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 clap. After Shi Jueyuan finished speaking, the whole venue was filled with warm applause. Some people in the audience clapped their hands hard to show their support for Shi Jueyuan. These people didn't even consider whether Guhan had the ability to be the Sword Tower Master. In everyone's mind, only the oldest and highest level swordbearer could be the Sword Tower Master. Just based on Guhan's age, he definitely couldn't be the Sword Tower Master, not to mention that he was involved in Cai Zhongwen's matter. Even the Star Universe Sword Spirit couldn't help but secretly nod. Although he was Liu Lei's old subordinate, he was also ambitious. He had always thought that he would be the Sword Tower Master, but he didn't expect that Guhan would take it. How could the Star Universe Sword Spirit accept this? Old man Liu Lei, let's see what tricks you have up your sleeves this time. Hearing his words, countless people applauded. Shi Jueyuan was very proud. There was only one step to impeach the Sword Tower Master, and that was to let the people of Yuzhang City vote. As long as the majority agreed to let Guhan step down, Guhan had to step down. He had already won the majority's approval. Liu Lei was bound to lose this game. Master, what do you plan to do? Long Xiaoya and Lu Shihua, who were at the door, looked at Guhan worriedly. Obviously, in their hearts, Guhan was bound to lose. Cough, cough. A coughing sound came from the side. Liu Lei stood up unsteadily. It was my idea to pass the position of Sword Pavilion Master to Ji Yuhan. I believe everyone is clear about the rules of passing the position of Sword Pavilion Master. The position of Sword Tower Master has always been passed down from master to disciple. Is there a problem with me, Liu Lei, passing it down to my own disciple? Of course there's a problem. Shi Jueyuan revealed a cold smile. Only a pure Sword Tower Master can do this. Lord Liu Lei, when you passed the position, you already took over the position of chairman of the Sword Committee, right? At that time, you already left the system of Sword Tower. You are no longer a pure Sword Tower Master, my chairman Liu Lei. Chapter 679. Ridiculous. Am I not the Sword Pavilion Master after I took over the position of chairman of the Sword Committee? Is there such a rule in our Sword Pavilion that the chairman of the Sword Council and the Sword Pavilion Master can't pass the position of Sword Pavilion Master to his disciple? Liu Lei sneered. Of course you can pass the position to him. It's your freedom. Shi Jueyuan replied, unwilling to be outdone. But, as the chairman of the Sword Committee, shouldn't you pass the position to a more reliable candidate? Don't tell me that I can't find a swordsman stronger than this kid in Yuzhang City. This brat stinking of his mother's milk is just a mere famed sword rank swordsman. There are more than 300 famed sword rank swordsmen in Yuzhang City and more than 20 spirit sword rank swordsmen. Is there no one stronger than this brat? Shi Jueyuan's questions came one after another. If an ordinary person were in Guhan and Liu Lei's position, he would probably want to find a hole to hide in. And there's also the issue of experience. What experience can an 18-year-old have? What wisdom can he have? How can you leave the Sword Pavilion in the hands of such a person? Why don't you ask him to give up the position of Sword Pavilion Master first? When your disciple grows up a few dozen years and becomes stronger, we can return the position to him. That way, the position of Sword Pavilion Master will still belong to your disciple and grand disciple. Shi Jueyuan's words were sharp and vicious. He implied that Liu Lei passed the position to Guhan in order to control the position of Sword Pavilion Master in their hands. Yes, it makes sense. I can live for a few more years. I didn't want to pass the position to my disciple so early. How could I not know that he would be so suspected by you? Liu Lei suddenly sighed. But you don't know the situation at that time. The entire Yuzhong city was in danger. Over 1 million people's lives were threatened by Yuan Yang. If I didn't pass the position of Sword Pavilion Master to him, I'm afraid that over 1 million people would all die a violent death. What? How can the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master be filled with millions of people? Shi Jueyuan was shocked when he heard that. He thought that Liu Lei was just taking advantage of the chaos to pass the position to Guhan. He didn't know that Guhan becoming the Sword Pavilion Master was related to the lives of over 1 million people. It's not your fault. I never told you about this. Liu Lei waved his hand and a conversation could be heard in the hall. Guhan, my good disciple, where are you now? Was he unable to charge out? Are you injured? Where are you? If it's me, I'll go and save you. Master, disciple is fine. Disciple has an urgent matter to ask Master. What is the password to open the first level of this refuge system? Master, please tell disciple quickly. No. How much time will you waste by going back and forth, and how many lives will be lost? Also, unlocking the third level requires a genetic code, and there are only 2 people in Yuzhong City who can unlock this genetic code. I'm afraid you won't be able to find these 5 people. My good disciple, there is actually a way to ignore the iris unlock and the third level of lock. You can directly open the refuge system. What is it? Master, please tell disciple. I'll do it even if I have to risk my life. Don't worry, you don't have to risk your life. This is a good thing. After so many years, it's time for the Sword Firmament Pavilion Master to pass on. This was a conversation that was constantly filled with electric currents and squeaking sounds. Clearly, this was a recorded conversation. From this conversation, everyone with a normal IQ could understand that Guhan had to take over the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master in order to unlock the genetic code of the refuge system. Only then did everyone remember that the most important credit given to Ji Han by the government was the opening of the entire Yuzhong City's refuge system, allowing all the citizens of Yuzhong City to enter the refuge system to avoid Yuan Zhen's pursuit. Although Yuan Ku did not manage to infiltrate the ordinary zone, Guhan had saved the lives of more than 1 million survivors in the core zone. It seemed that Guhan had no choice but to take over the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master. He had done it to save people, not because Liu Lei had taken advantage of the chaos to pass the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master to his own disciple for personal gain. After understanding this, the haters who had been flaming Guhan on the forum shut their mouths. Compared to the lives of more than 1 million people, the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master was indeed nothing. Listening to this conversation, Shi Jueyuan's face turned livid. He did not know that there was such a story. The version he had heard from someone's mouth was like this: because Liu Lei took over as the chairman of the Sword Committee, he had to give up the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master. However, Liu Lei's most trusted spirit sword wielder, the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit, had been controlled by Yuan Ku, so Liu Lei passed the position of Sword Firmament Pavilion Master to Guhan during the chaos and kept it a secret. He planned to announce it after a while. Shi Jueyuan did not know that there was such a story, which made him extremely passive. Originally, he had done it for his own benefit, but now it had become for the lives of more than 1 million people. It was a great merit that had to be done. No one would deny this, and the whole atmosphere of public opinion was instantly reversed. No, I have to find the flaw in this. Shi Jueyuan thought silently. He was indeed an old fox who had lived for 70 or 80 years. Soon, he had an excuse. Master Liu Lei, I'm afraid this recording can't prove anything. What we heard was just a recording. Who knows what happened in reality? It's not impossible for this Guhan to finish this conversation while sitting in that coffee shop. Who knows if the fallout shelter was really opened by him? Who can be sure that there really isn't a second person next to him who can open this fallout shelter? As far as I know, the person in charge of the emergency response center also has this genetic authority. If he was next to Guhan at that time, what could he say? According to the rules of the Sword Committee, without the order of you or the late Sword Immortal Baiju, the person in charge is absolutely not allowed to leave the emergency response center. Shi Jueyuan's question made the audience nod involuntarily. Indeed, this was just a recording, and there was no video or other specific images. It could not prove that Guhan was in that situation at that time. Moreover, Shi Jueyuan's words reflected a very insidious point of view. In order to pass the position of Sword Pavilion Master to Guhan, Liu Lei deliberately transferred the person in charge of the Emergency Response Center away from the Emergency Response Center. This created a situation where only Liu Lei was in the Emergency Response Center. This forced Liu Lei to pass the position of Sword Pavilion Master to Guhan, so that he could open the genetic lock of the Emergency Response Center. This was all Liu Lei's conspiracy. Conspiracy theories are a marketable commodity at any given time. After the audience heard Shi Jueyuan's suspicion, they all felt that Shi Jueyuan's words made sense. This was Liu Lei's conspiracy. Otherwise, how could things be so coincidental? Guhan's support level, which had just increased a little, instantly dropped a lot. Little Jueyuan, I knew you would have such a problem. Liu Lei's little Jueyuan caused a roar of laughter, and Shi Jueyuan's face kept twitching. It was not because of the title, but because he found that Liu Lei seemed to have a way to deal with it. Liu Lei waved his hand again, and a video was projected on the projector in the trial hall. The front of the video seemed to be a young and beautiful girl, and behind her was a magnificent hall. The girl said indifferently. The girl said calmly, I promise everyone with the glory of my family that Sword-bearer Guhan was indeed in a situation where he could not make a choice. I arrived at the Emergency Response Center one step earlier than Guhan, but the Emergency Response Center was already empty. Guhan came to the Emergency Response Center alone. When he activated the Emergency Response Center's system, there was no one with authority beside him. He had no choice but to succeed as Sword Pavilion Master. If you suspect that Master Liu Lei did this on purpose, then I promise you that it is impossible. After Master Liu Lei left Yuzhang City, the communication between Yuzhang City and our expeditionary force was completely cut off. How could Master Liu Lei have expected that Yuan Ku would enter the core area through the quantum teleportation array? It was even more impossible for him to have arranged all this in advance. Who are you? Little girl, why should we believe what you said? Who do you and your family think you are? Family honor? What a joke. A member of the audience cursed in the audience seats. Although this audience member's words were not pleasant to hear, he said what everyone else was thinking. They also wanted to question who this little girl was. She actually dared to boast shamelessly and make such a guarantee. Only the heads of the aristocratic families sitting in the front row had ashen faces. They had already recognized who this little girl was. This little girl had used her family's honor to make a promise. No one could refute her, and no one would doubt her. I am Liuonian Ling, a direct descendant of the Liuonian aristocratic family. I will be the future family head of the Liuonian aristocratic family. I swear on my and the Liuonian aristocratic family's honor that everything I said is the truth. After saying that, Liuonian Ling's recording ended. Everyone was silent. They might not know who Liuonian Ling was, but they definitely knew what the Liuonian aristocratic family was. They also knew how trustworthy a promise made by the Liuonian aristocratic family was. This was a promise made by the top aristocratic family of the human race. No one would doubt it. So the direct descendant of the Liuonian aristocratic family was also in Yuzhang City. The forum was abuzz with discussion. That's right. The Liuonian aristocratic family lives up to its name. Wherever humans are in danger, the Liuonian aristocratic family will be there. No wonder the Liuonian aristocratic family is the guardian of humanity. Little Jueyuan, do you have any more questions? Liu Lei asked Shi Jueyuan with a smile. Of course. Shi Jueyuan stood up, unconvinced. I admit that the situation at that time was indeed unavoidable. Ji Yuhan took over as Sword Firmament Pavilion Master and saved many people. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not wrong, but it doesn't mean that Guhan has the right to continue being the Sword Pavilion Master. He's just a mere famed sword wielder. Let's wait for him to grow for a decade or so. Before that, we have to give the position to someone more capable. The Sword Pavilion Master has to be changed. This is what the 5 great Jendi aristocratic families and the masses want. Senior Shi, if I understand correctly, you won't oppose me as long as I'm capable enough, right? Guhan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said. That's right. I won't oppose you as long as you're capable enough, Shi Jueyuan said through clenched teeth. Chapter 680. No one thought that a trial would eventually evolve to the point where it would be decided by a martial arts competition. Shi Jueyuan was forced by Guhan's words to say that as long as Guhan was capable enough, he wouldn't object to Guhan taking the position of Sword Pavilion Master. Thus, a martial arts competition became inevitable. Elder Shi, may I ask what kind of opponent Junior needs to defeat for you to be willing to acknowledge Junior's strength? Guhan looked at Shi Jueyuan and asked. Now in Yuzhang City, except for your master, everyone is a spirit sword level swordbearer. As long as you can defeat a spirit sword level swordbearer, I naturally have nothing to say. Shi Jueyuan pursed his lips and said. Oh, it turns out that Elder Shi wants me to deal with a spirit sword level swordbearer. Junior is really flattered. There was a hint of sarcasm in Guhan's words. Everyone knew that it was unfair to let a famous sword-level swordbearer fight a spirit sword-level swordbearer. However, Shi Jueyuan bit his lip tightly. He knew that Guhan was the military governor, and he also knew that Guhan had defeated an immortal sword-level swordbearer as a famous sword-level swordbearer in the game. Although the game wasn't reality, and Ji Yuhan couldn't possibly have the same strength as he did in the game, defeating a famed sword-level swordsman in real life shouldn't be a problem. How could Shi Jueyuan dare to let a famed sword-level swordsman compete with Ji Yuhan? Even if it was a common spirit sword-level swordbearer, Shi Jueyuan didn't dare to send her. Then Elder Shi, please appoint a spirit sword-level swordbearer. Let's see if Junior can defeat this spirit sword-level swordbearer by luck. Guhan said lightly. Shi Jueyuan coldly snorted, pressed a button on his personal terminal, and gave a few instructions to someone. After waiting for about 10 minutes, a middle-aged mature woman with a noble temperament and a cold expression walked into the trial hall. Guhan recognized this middle-aged woman. She was the Mu Shui sword spirit who had a conflict with Guhan in Fort Yuyang. It turned out that this Mu Shui sword spirit was a swordbearer of the Jendi clan. Guhan remembered that Mu Shui's sword spirit's surname was Shi. It seemed like she was Shi Jueyuan's descendant. Mu Shui, come and ask Pavilion Master Guhan for advice. Let's see if our new Sword Pavilion Master has the ability to sit in this position. Judging from Shi Jueyuan's attitude, it was like an adult lecturing a child. Although a battle between a spirit sword level and a treasure sword level was indeed like an adult teaching a child a lesson. Yes, Uncle Patriarch. The Mu Shui sword spirit nodded her head, before strolling in front of Guhan, a malevolent expression on her face. Pavilion Master Guhan, let me ask for some advice from you. Don't worry, I won't let you lie in the medical bay. It's just a spar. Hearing the Mu Shui sword spirit's words, Guhan did not get angry. Instead, he revealed a disdainful smile, which made the Mu Shui sword spirit even angrier. Let's change places. After all, this is the trial hall. We won't be able to fight freely, Shi Jueyuan said with a face full of smiles. The Mu Shui sword spirit was one of the top 3 spirit sword level swordbearers in Yuzhang City. She had once fought against 3 nether level swordbearers, Yuan Ku. With the Mu Shui sword spirit making a move, this Guhan would definitely lose. However, this Guhan was indeed an expert. If the 2 of them were to fight, even 10 trial halls wouldn't be enough. Therefore, Shi Jueyuan suggested to change places. When the audience heard this, they naturally got up and prepared to leave the trial hall. Wait, Guhan suddenly said, there's no need to leave here. The battle will end soon. I guarantee that no one will be hurt. Are you joking? Just because you guarantee that no one will be hurt, no one will be hurt. This is a battle between spirit sword level swordbearers. If a sword chi were to sweep over, it wouldn't be as simple as 1 or 2 people. Staying in this trial hall is just courting death. When the audience thought about it, they felt that it was nonsense. They got up even faster, afraid that the two of them would start fighting if they didn't agree. Hehe, this little friend is right. There's no need to change places to deal with him. The battle will end quickly and no one will be hurt. The Mu Shui sword spirit also said with a sinister smile. She simply didn't care about Guhan. Good, good, good. Since the two of you are so confident, then let the battle begin. I'll count to 3 and you can release the sword lady. Liu Lei, who was at the side, didn't seem to mind the matter getting bigger. Instead, he urged the two of them to start the battle. However, Liu Lei's words weren't just empty words. With a wave of his hand, a void wall appeared around the two of them. This void wall could easily absorb sword chi of spirit sword level, so there was no need to worry about hurting the people outside the wall. Since the chairman has said so, then let's begin. Although Shi Jueyuan instinctively felt that something was wrong, if he insisted on changing the venue, it would instead make him look guilty. Even if the Mu Shui sword spirit won, others would say that it wasn't a glorious victory. It was already disgraceful enough for a spirit sword level to fight a famed sword level, so how could it be any more disgraceful? 1, 2, 3. After Liu Lei counted to 3, the Mu Shui sword spirit's hand still hadn't touched her sword lady. In her eyes, a famed sword level swordsman wasn't worth her attention. Therefore, when Liu Lei and the other two finished counting, she slowly touched her sword lady. It was this small oversight that instantly determined the result. The Mu Shui sword spirit's hand had just touched her sword hilt and pulled out her spirit sword lady. Before she could inject her sword essence into the sword lady, she felt her hand being hit by a huge force. It was as if a high-speed missile had hit the back of her hand. The huge impact caused the Mu Shui sword spirit to be unable to control her wrist. Her hand instinctively loosened, and before she could release her sword lady, it fell to the ground. The panicked Mu Shui sword spirit hurriedly tried to make her sword lady return to her sword, but it was already too late. A cold blade was already pressed against her neck. At the same time, her right hand was being held tightly by another hand. Even if the sword lady returned to her sword, it wouldn't be able to touch her palm. She wouldn't even be able to activate her protective shield. As long as the blade on her neck lightly slashed, the Mu Shui sword spirit's aorta would be cut open. If she didn't receive treatment in time, in less than 5 minutes, the Mu Shui sword spirit's life would be over. In this situation, whether it was the Mu Shui sword spirit, Shi Jueyuan, the Emperor Sword family's patriarch in the first row, or the disciplinary committee's swordbearers in the courtroom, they were all stunned. In less than 2 seconds, they had only just blinked their eyes, and the result of the match had already been decided. The Mu Shui sword spirit's neck was pressed against a treasured sword that was shining with a black light. This scene was also broadcasted live to millions of people's televisions. Everyone who saw this scene couldn't close their mouths. Was this Guhan still human? Even Jiyu Jin Jendi couldn't do this back then, Shi Jueyuan muttered to himself in a daze. In his entire life, the most amazing swordbearer he had ever seen was Jiyu Jin Fangcheng. During Jiyu Jin Fangcheng's visit to Yuzhang City, Shi Jueyuan, who was the family's youth representative, had the honor of speaking a few words with Jiyu Jin Jendi. He was even given a few pointers by Jiyu Jin Jendi. These pointers were useful to Shi Jueyuan for the rest of his life. Later on, Jiyu Jin Jendi told the story to everyone. He said that when he was at the peak of the famed sword level, he had challenged a spirit sword level swordbearer. He only used 5 moves to win, and he pressed his sword against his opponent's neck. Then he used this story to warn everyone that as a swordbearer, they must pay attention to their opponent. Even if it was an opponent that was 1 level lower than them, they must not underestimate them. Otherwise, they would suffer greatly. Shi Jueyuan suddenly felt that the story told by Jiyu Jin Jendi was repeating itself at this moment. Guhan was Jiyu Jin Jendi back then, and his niece, Mu Shui, became that contemptuous spirit sword level swordbearer. However, Jiyu Jinjendi still used 5 moves, but this Guhan only used 1 move. This was too scary. Xinyu, you can announce the winner. Liu Lei seemed to have expected this scene. He urged Xinyu Sword Spirit, who was still stunned. According to the rules of the competition between swordbearers, as long as one side could cause fatal damage to the other, the winner could be announced. Without a doubt, Guhan met the conditions for victory. Yes, Chairman. Xinyu Sword Spirit composed himself and shouted with a powerful voice, I announce the end of the competition. The winner is famed sword-level swordbearer, Guhan. The crowd that was rushing out of the judgment hall suddenly stopped. Everyone's attention was on how to leave the judgment hall. From the start, no one noticed that the competition had already started, and no one noticed that the competition had already ended. Only when they heard Xinyu Sword Spirit's voice did they turn their heads in confusion. They saw Guhan's sword resting on Mu Shue's neck. Thanks for letting me win. Only then did Jiyu Han move his sword away from the Mu Shue Sword Spirit's neck. The Mu Shue Sword Spirit, who had lost all rationality due to her rage, immediately picked up her spiritual sword and slashed it towards Jiyu Han's head. If this slash landed, Guhan's head would be cut in half. At the crucial moment, Jiyu Han did not dodge or evade. Instead, he slashed out with his sword, blocking Sword Spirit Mu Shue's sword. He asked coldly, Sword Spirit Mu Shue, are you trying to break the rules of humans? Mu Shue, stop. Shi Jueyuan finally reacted and shouted in an even louder voice. After losing, she still wanted to sneak attack. This was a mistake that was enough for the disciplinary committee to lock her up for 100 years. The Shi family only had 1 spirit sword-level swordbearer left. Even if she didn't want the position of Sword Pavilion head, Mu Shue's sword spirit couldn't be harmed. Mu Shue's sword spirit suddenly came to a realization. She blankly threw the spiritual sword in her hand onto the ground and ran out of the judgment hall without looking back. Just like the final 10,000 swords, she didn't have the face to stay here any longer. She didn't even take back her spiritual sword, letting her throw it on the ground. Little Jueyuan, do you have any more questions? No. What else could Shi Jueyuan say? He was already prepared to admit defeat. Okay, then let's start the voting. Liu Lei finally breathed a sigh of relief. He had finally won. He clapped his hands and said to Xinyu Sword Spirit, now, immediately carry out the final procedure of impeachment. All personal terminals in the city will give the order and let them vote. Whether or not they agree to replace Guhan, let the people of Yuzhang City make the decision. Although it was for the people of Yuzhang City to make the decision, Liu Lei felt that he had already won. The people of Yuzhang City had already seen Guhan's strength. This was the strength that could defeat a spirit sword-level swordbearer. At the same time, when Guhan took over as Sword Pavilion head, he had indirectly saved 1 million lives. There was no doubt that Guhan would win. Therefore, the next moment, all the people of Yuzhang City received a message on their personal terminals. This message only had 2 options, agree or disagree. After a full 10 minutes of voting time, the highest intelligence projected the voting results. Voter turnout, 73%. Agree to replace Sword Pavilion head, 58%, 15232,547 votes. Disagree to replace Sword Pavilion head, 42%, 10326,541 votes. Chapter 681. Sigh, we lost. Let's go. Shi Jueyuan didn't want to look at the results anymore, so he got up and prepared to leave. This was how people with such personalities were. Once they felt that they were great, they wouldn't care about anything else. However, once they encountered a major setback, they would immediately lose confidence like a frosted eggplant. Fortunately, other than Shi Jueyuan, the other family heads weren't stupid enough to not look at the results. They immediately pulled on Shi Jueyuan's clothes and said excitedly, Old man Shi, who said we lost? We won. Shi Jueyuan looked at the projected screen, and his body stiffened. He rubbed his eyes, which was rare for him. Am I seeing things? Then, 58% of them agreed to replace the Guohan system. That's right, they all agreed. Everyone agreed to replace Guhan. The Liu family head patted Shi Jueyuan's shoulder and said, "Good, good, 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 good." Shi Jueyuan revealed a bright smile, just like an 18-year-old girl. He looked at Liu Lei with this bright smile, but he realized that his tearful face seemed to be pressed by countless thumbtacks. He couldn't even move a layer of his skin. "Chairman, the results are out. What do you think?" When he said this, Shi Jueyuan was extremely happy. "What's the rush?" Liu Lei's body swayed. "Isn't there still 22% of people who haven't voted? Wait until they've voted, then you can be happy." Liu Lei could only place his hopes on the people who hadn't voted yet. When Liu Lei said this, Shi Jueyuan also felt that Liu Lei had a chance of turning the tables. At this time, the people who agreed were ahead by 16%, and the people who hadn't voted were 22%. This 16% was 16% out of 78%, and this 22% was 22% out of 100%. If Guhan could win 70% of the 22%, then Guhan could turn the tables. Although this was a very difficult thing to do, it was not completely impossible. What if Jiyu Han's luck went out of control? Just as Shi Jueyuan was worrying about this, the words of the highest level artificial intelligence made him completely relax. "You only have 10 minutes to vote. After the voting period, all the votes would no longer be recognized. The result of the vote has already been decided. The sword-bearer, Guhan, must leave the position of Sword Pavilion Master. The position of Sword Pavilion Master must be replaced." "How could this be? Aren't you on our side?" Liu Lei sat down weakly. He had always thought that the superior artificial intelligence was on his side, but he never expected that at the most critical moment, the superior artificial intelligence would stab him in the back. "Good disciple." Liu Lei looked at Guhan. All of this was planned by Guhan. Maybe Guhan had a way to deal with it. Liu Lei looked over and found that Guhan's expression was very calm. There was not a trace of emotion on his face. This expression made Liu Lei heave a sigh of relief. He felt that since Guhan was so calm, he must have a way to turn defeat into victory. Just as Liu Lei was thinking about this, his communicator rang. Liu Lei took a look and saw that it was a call from Guhan. "Master, man proposes, God disposes. I can see through things, but I can't see through people's hearts. The position of Sword Pavilion Master is like a fleeting cloud to me. I have never cared about it. Since these people want it, I will give it to them. Sooner or later, I will get back at them for what they have done today." It turned out that Jiyu Han's calm face was because he had already decided to admit defeat. He had already decided to give up the position of Sword Pavilion Master. He no longer cared about these benefits. That was why he could be as calm as still water, as if he didn't care about his failure at all. "Good disciple, have you really gotten over it?" Liu Lei sent a message to Guhan. "There is nothing I can't get over. The only thing that matters is whether it is yours or not. Now that it is no longer yours, showing any expression will only make others laugh at you. Why don't you be more open-minded?" Guhan replied. "This child, he really hasn't gotten over it." Liu Lei smiled bitterly. It was a pity that things could not be changed. It was all broadcasted in front of all the people of Yuzhang City. No one had the guts to change this fact. They could only grit their teeth and swallow it. "Chairman Sinew, you can announce the verdict now. Hurry up and finish the procedure so that we can elect the new Sword Pavilion Master. The Sword Pavilion is very important to Yuzhang City. It cannot be without a master for a day," Shi Jueyuan urged in a victorious tone. Sinew Sword Spirit was a little hesitant. Although he was very happy that Guhan had been removed from his position, he might be the next Sword Pavilion Master. Because of this, he had to respect Liu Lei's opinion. It was still unknown who the next Sword Pavilion Master would be, but it would definitely be a choice between Liu Lei and the Emperor Sword aristocratic family's two camps. He was Liu Lei's man. It was impossible to get the Emperor Sword aristocratic family's trust if he changed his camp. Therefore, at this time, he had to respect Liu Lei more and listen to him more. He had to let Liu Lei push him as the only candidate in his camp. Therefore, Sinew Sword Spirit was in a state of hesitation. Without Liu Lei's clear indication, he never announced the final verdict. This dragged on for another 10 minutes. When the audience and Shi Jueyuan were starting to get impatient, Liu Lei finally said, "Xin Yu, enforce the law impartially." Xin Yu's sword spirit had been waiting for this order. He knocked the gavel in his hand on the table and said loudly, "Then I shall announce that from this moment on, practitioner Jiyu Han's identity as the Sword Tower's pavilion master. Please wait. Please wait." Before the Xin Yu sword spirit could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by a panting voice. Xin Yu sword spirit looked and saw that the one who spoke was a skinny youth. However, looking at the 3 sword sheaths on his waist, he was actually a famed sword rank sword wielder. "How dare you? Who are you to actually dare to obstruct the disciplinary committee's verdict? Someone, lock him up in the confinement room. Let him learn the rules of our disciplinary committee," Xin Yu sword spirit said sternly. Immediately, a few people went forward to grab the youth's arm. The youth struggled and said, "Let me go, don't grab me. This imperial bloodline impeachment is incorrect and incomplete. I have important evidence." "Wait, stop." Liu Lei's heart jumped. He seemed to have seen this youth somewhere before. He thought for a moment and remembered. Didn't this youth come back from Chongyang Mountain with Liuyan Ling and the others? Liu Lei vaguely remembered that this person was a disciple of the Heaven-Shrouding family. Since he was a disciple of the Heaven-Shrouding family and said that there was a problem with the imperial bloodline impeachment, could there really be a big problem? Thinking of this, Liu Lei couldn't sit still anymore. He immediately gave the order, and the people who were about to take Yi Wenjun away also stopped. "Child, speak slowly. Tell me what's wrong with this. What do you mean by incorrect and incomplete? What evidence do you have? Tell me," Liu Lei said amiably. Liu Lei said kindly, but Yi Wuying, who was sitting next to Shi Jueyuan, rolled her eyes. Her body seemed to have lost its strength. She slumped down and muttered to herself, "Smelly brat, spoiling my big plan, this smelly brat. My name is Yi Wenjun. The imperial bloodline impeachment document is incomplete. I have a supplementary document here." Huff, huff. Yi Wenjun said as he breathed roughly. Because the public transportation system in the core region hadn't been restored, he had evidently run all the way here. "You're Yi Wenjun? Could it be that you're a disciple of the Heaven-Shrouding family? What's your relationship with the family leader sitting there, Yi Wuying?" Liu Lei asked despite knowing the answer. "He's my father, and I'm his son," Yi Wenjun replied honestly. "So that's how it is. Looks like you're the next family leader of the Heaven-Shrouding family. You do have the right to sit here." Liu Lei nodded. "What supplementary document did you say? What does that mean?" "I found this in a hidden place in my family's library. It's a supplementary document about the imperial bloodline impeachment. My father only found the official document, but he didn't find this supplementary document. I found it when I was cleaning the library today, so I hurried to bring it here," Yi Wenjun replied. "There's a supplementary document. Why didn't you mention this to us?" Hearing Yi Wenjun say this, Shi Jueyuan immediately asked Yi Wuying. "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know anything. My son found it," Yi Wuying said weakly and guiltily. Hearing his tone, Shi Jueyuan could guess most of what had happened. Yi Wuying must have known about the existence of this supplementary document long ago, but he deliberately concealed it and didn't tell me. However, he didn't expect that he would be exposed by his own son in the end. Seeing Yi Wuying's expression as if his mother had died, Shi Jueyuan knew that this supplementary document contained important information that would determine the outcome of this entire matter. However, this guy hid such important information. "I'm asking you, tell me honestly, what does this supplementary document say?" Shi Jueyuan asked even more harshly. "I don't know, I don't know, I really don't know." Yi Wuying only knew how to say that she didn't know. She wouldn't say a single word more, which made Shi Jueyuan extremely angry. At the same time, an extremely terrifying thought appeared in his mind. Could this Yi Wuying have colluded with Liu Lei to set up a trap for me? Good, very good. You and your son are both good. I'll remember this. If we fail today, let's see how long your Yi family can last. Shi Jueyuan threw down such a threat and ignored Yi Wuying. Yi Wuying's body trembled even more violently. Chapter 682. Good girl, let me see your supplementary document. Liu Lei walked to Yi Wenjun's side and said urgently. Yi Wenjun opened her dimensional pocket and took out a normal envelope and handed it to Yi Wenjun. Yi Wenjun opened the envelope and saw that the so-called supplementary document was just a simple piece of paper. Everyone, including Guhan, stared at the paper in Liu Lei's hand. They wanted to know what was written on it and if they could turn the situation around. Phew! Liu Lei let out a sigh of relief, and a smile suddenly appeared on his originally stern face. He respectfully held the piece of paper in his hand, and then asked Yi Wenjun, "Good girl, can you confirm the authenticity of this envelope?" I only know that this was found among our ancestors' belongings. But our Yi family has been through many disasters. I can't be sure if the things on this paper are real or fake, answered Yi Wenjun honestly. Very well, Sir Bat, Liu Lei said to the heir. Could I trouble you to examine this piece of paper and the notes on it to see if they were left behind by His Majesty Shroud Heaven? What? This paper is His Majesty's authentic handwriting? The audience was shocked when they heard Liu Lei's words. Wow, there are less than 200 pieces of His Majesty's authentic handwriting. The discussion on the forum started again. Isn't that right? I heard that His Majesty hated writing. He would use electronic documents whenever he could. He would only write by hand on paper when he had no other choice. In his later years, he destroyed many of his authentic handwriting. There are only 127 pieces left in the world. Even a single word can be sold for tens of millions of RMB, an audience member replied. Wow, if there are 100 words on this piece of paper, wouldn't it be worth billions of RMB? The poster who spoke before asked in surprise. Are you kidding me? There are less than 20 pieces of His Majesty's handwriting with more than 100 words. Which one of them isn't worth billions? This answer shocked the audience even more. If they could find an authentic piece of His Majesty's handwriting, wouldn't they be rich? All right, stop discussing. Hurry up and watch TV. After Liu Lei asked the question, a void gate appeared in front of him. Liu Lei took the paper and stepped into the void gate. After a minute or two, Liu Lei walked out of the void gate. I have sent the paper to the appraisal office. The highest level AI will be in charge of the appraisal. Just wait for the news, Liu Lei said calmly. Everyone waited for another 10 minutes. Liu Lei received a message on his communicator, so he opened the void door again and repeated the process of going back and forth. Then, he returned with the note. What is the appraisal result? Shi Jueyuan asked excitedly. This is indeed the work of His Majesty Shroud the Heavens, said a robotic voice. It was the voice of the highest AI, Bat. Then please project the contents of this piece of paper. I won't show the real thing to everyone. Liu Lei said. The projector projected the contents of the note, and Yang Qi's eyes went wide in anticipation of seeing what His Majesty Shroud Heaven had left behind. To the Sword Committee, I have thought about it again and again, and I feel that it is inappropriate to rely solely on the will of the people. The sword bearers are the protectors of humanity. They fight bravely, and their will is above the people. Therefore, I have decided that when I impeach the Emperor, the will of the people will be the same, and the sword bearers will be different. An ancient sword bearer's will is equivalent to 100, a treasure sword bearer's will is equivalent to 1,000, a famed sword bearer's will is equivalent to 10,000, a spirit sword bearer's will is equivalent to 100,000, an immortal sword bearer's will is equivalent to 1,000,000, an emperor sword bearer's will is equivalent to 10 million. This is the way of harmony, and I hereby supplement it. Yi Qing's handwriting. So that's how it is. His Majesty Shrouding Heaven really is farsighted. Shi Jueyuan nodded. When the other sword-bearers saw this, they could not help but nod to themselves. Only some of the ignorant spectators felt quite confused when they saw this ancient text, and they did not know what the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor was talking about. But it didn't matter. Very soon, the vernacular translation of this sentence appeared on the forum. Everyone saw the vernacular translation and suddenly understood. To put it simply, There was only one core meaning in establishing this letter, and that was, after the impeachment of the emperor bloodline began, it was not appropriate to judge based on the will of the people. The will of the swordsman should be above the will of the people, so in terms of the specific distribution of votes, the votes of the swordsman and the votes of the people were different. The thoughts of the people were equivalent to one vote, which meant that each person only had one vote. The sword-bearers had different votes based on their level. An ancient sword had 100 votes, a treasure sword had 1,000 votes, a famed sword had 10,000 votes, a spirit sword had 100,000 votes, a celestial sword had 1,000,000 votes, and an emperor sword had 10 million votes. Taking Yuzhang City as an example, there were around 20,000 sword-bearers in Yuzhang City, and their votes added up to more than 10 million. In other words, the will of these 20,000 sword-bearers was equivalent to the will of 10 million ordinary people. After understanding this, the ordinary people couldn't help but feel a bit angry. It turned out that in shrouding Heaven Gendi's eyes, 100 ordinary people were only equivalent to one ancient sword. However, they quickly calmed down, because they were already used to it. They were used to living a life where the sword-bearers had a high status. Compared to the privilege of the sword-bearers, a little bit of votes was nothing. Furthermore, the position of Sword Tower Master had nothing to do with ordinary people. Ordinary people would never come into contact with Sword Tower, so they wouldn't care if an ordinary person became the Sword Tower Master. Chairman Sinew, because this additional document has been discovered, I would like to request a reset of the voting results. I would like to invalidate the votes of the sword-bearers, and let the sword-bearers vote again to correct the result, Liu Lei said. Although Sinew Sword Spirit was very unwilling, he couldn't go against Liu Lei's wishes. He simply nodded and agreed. Mr. Bat, do you have any objections? Liu Lei asked. This is Emperor shrouding Heaven's wish. I have no objections, Bat's electronic voice answered. With the agreement of the two people, Liu Lei didn't even need to ask Shi Jueyuan for his opinion. He immediately announced that the voting for the sword-bearers would begin again. Old Shi, what do you think about this? Will there be any changes? A family head asked Shi Jueyuan worriedly. Right now, there are more than 12,000 ancient sword-bearers in Yuzhang City, which is 1.2 million votes. There are more than 6,000 sword-bearers, and now there are more than 4,500 sword-bearers, which is 4.5 million votes. There are more than 400 famous sword-bearers, which is more than 4 million votes. There are 23 spirit sword-bearers, which is 2.3 million votes. And Liu Lei alone is worth 1 million votes, which is about 13 million votes in total, Shi Jueyuan analyzed. We have 12 spirit sword-bearers, which is 1.2 million votes. There are also about 200 famous sword-bearers who belong to our family, which is 2 million votes. Ancient sword-bearers and treasure sword-bearers are a bit weaker. Even if they only have 2 million votes, they add up to 5.2 million votes. Including the 5 million votes we already have, we have more than 10 million votes. And the most they can get is 7.8 million votes. We will definitely win this round, Shi Jueyuan said confidently. And among these nearly 20,000 sword-bearers, who knows how many of them will vote? Maybe they will be like ordinary people, with only 78% of the voting rate. Immediately issue the order to all of our people to vote. We must make sure that we get all 4.2 million votes. With this, our victory is without a doubt. Shi Jueyuan's words were like a reassurance pill. Everyone's mind calmed down, and they waited for the voting to begin again with a smile on their faces. Clearing the votes for the sword-bearers, Bat's voice said anxiously. Immediately, on the original number of votes, the number of agree and disagree options dropped. These were the number of votes belonging to the sword-bearers. Because there was only one vote for each profession, it was impossible to infer the actual voting result according to the number that was removed. But what worried Shi Jueyuan was that the number of disagree options was more than 10,000, which meant that most of the sword-bearers were on Guhan's side. Start to send the votes to the sword-bearers again. The voting time is 20 minutes. Those who don't vote after the voting time will automatically abstain. Bat's indifferent voice said, and immediately, every practitioner's personal terminal received a new voting option. Every sword-bearer carefully considered their choice, and then cast their precious vote. The voting for the immortal sword-bearers has ended. Disagree with Guhan's resignation, 1 million votes. Bat announced. Immediately, Guhan's votes increased from 103,26541 to 113,26541, which was 11.32 million votes, while the votes for the agree option remained unchanged. This vote must have been cast by Liu Lei. It was a matter of course that 1 million votes were cast for Guhan. The expressions of Shi Jueyuan and the others didn't change. The voting for the spiritual sword-bearers has ended. After the immortal sword-bearers, the spiritual sword-bearers had finished voting, which meant that all the 23 spiritual sword-bearers had voted. This result was also within Shi Jueyuan's expectation. After all, the spiritual sword-bearers were important targets for the big families to rope in. They knew clearly who was on which side, so there was nothing to hide. Agree with Guhan's resignation, 2 million votes. Disagree with Guhan's resignation, 300,000 vote. The next result announced by Bat almost made Shi Jueyuan jump with joy. On the contrary, Liu Lei's face was so gloomy that he wanted to poke a hole in the sky. How could old Shi be like this? Don't we only have 2 million votes? When did we have 8 more spirit sword level sword bearers? When did they switch to our side? The head of the Liu family asked very excitedly. If 20 of the 23 spiritual sword bearers were on their side, then they didn't need to impeach Liu Lei. They could directly make Liu Lei a mere figurehead, and Liu Lei would have nothing to say. No, they are still on Liu Lei's side, but on the issue of the sword pavilion master, they have the same interests as us. Which spiritual sword-bearer doesn't want the position of sword pavilion master? Shi Jueyuan said gloomily. He actually ignored this important issue. Fortunately, the result of this issue was on his side. We can celebrate the victory in advance, Shi Jueyuan said. Chapter 683. This bunch of ungrateful beast. Seeing the voting results, Liu Lei could guess what his spiritual sword-level sword-bearers were planning, so he cursed with resentment. These spiritual sword-level sword-bearers were all sword-bearers that he had helped in his early years, and each of them treated him like a father. He didn't expect that they would stab him in the back at such a crucial time. Master, don't be angry. If it were me, I would be the same as them. Who doesn't want to be a step higher? Master, you should be glad that you still have 3 of your most loyal subordinates. Guhan's communication was sent to Liu Lei's personal terminal. Looking at Liu Lei was ashamed and angry, and he couldn't wait to find these 8 traitors. But Liu Lei endured it. If he really found these 8 people, then these 8 people would definitely run to the side of the aristocratic families, and he would be a lame duck in the future. Sigh, I thought I found a way to turn defeat into victory, but in the end, it was all for naught. Seeing that the consent option had increased from 155,232,547 votes to 172,32547 votes, which was 17.23 million votes, and the gap between the two had widened to nearly 6 million votes, Liu Lei simply had the urge to give up. Because the number of people in the immortal sword level and spiritual sword level was the smallest, the voting results of these 2 levels were announced first. If it was still based on the number of people, then the next result should be the voting results of the famous sword level. But it was more likely that the voting results of these 3 levels would not be announced until the end of the 20th minute. Because as long as one person did not vote, the voting results of that level would not be announced. After waiting for about 17 minutes, unexpectedly, the voting results of the famous sword level swordbearers were out. The famous sword level swordbearers have all voted. Agree with Guhan's resignation, 1.03 million votes. Disagree with Guhan's resignation, 3.56 million votes. Bat reported the results, and then the scene was in an uproar. This meant that out of a total of 459 famous sword level swordbearers, more than 3/4 of them voted against Guhan's resignation. A total of 356 people voted against Guhan's resignation, and only 103 people voted for Guhan's resignation. The difference between the 2 votes instantly narrowed to 3.5 million votes. How could this be? What are our people doing? Are they crazy? How do you normally control your subordinates? Shi Jueyuan couldn't accept this result. According to their calculations, there were more than 200 famed swordsmen in their faction. In other words, they should get at least 2 million votes out of the votes for the famed swordsman. If they included the scattered votes from the unaffiliated people, they could get an optimistic estimate of 3 million votes. But in reality, it was a different story. Not only did he not get a single vote, he didn't even get a single one. On the contrary, more than half of the people in his base voted for Guhan to stay. This was really strange. What happened in there? Why did they betray us? Shi Jueyuan suddenly felt the pain that Liu Lei had felt. I guess it's probably because Guhan is the same level as them, the family head of the Liu family guest. They are all famous sword bearers, and they hope to see someone at the same level as them become the Sword Tower Pavilion Master. That way, they will feel more honored. The most important thing is that the votes are anonymous. We don't even know who betrayed us. They are fearless and let me find the detailed list. I will definitely not let them go. The family head of the Lin family was the most hot-tempered one. He kept cursing. It seemed that he would really take revenge on those famed swordsmen who betrayed him. Only an idiot would pursue this matter. Shi Jueyuan glanced at the family head of the Lin family and thought to himself. These famed sword-level sword-bearers only dared to betray him in secret. Was he going to force them to betray him openly as well? However, Shi Jueyuan didn't bother to remind the family head of the Lin family. He was eager to see the Lin family decline. The four big families had always been scheming against each other. Today, they could form an alliance. Tomorrow, they could stab each other. I think there is another possibility. Yi Wuying, who had been silent, suddenly said timidly, after all, Guhan saved the lives of everyone in the core area of Yuzhang City. Those famed swordsmen were all saved by Guhan. They have no other way to repay Guhan's favor, so they can only help Guhan. I didn't expect Yi Wuying to not be a complete idiot. Shi Jueyuan looked at Yi Wuying in surprise. Even he hadn't thought of this. But it was also because he was closely involved. As long as he calmed down, it would not be difficult for him to figure out the reason. Wait, if this is really the reason, then the ancient sword and treasure sword swordsman will also be doomed. The family head of the Lin family exclaimed. Shi Jueyuan and the others' hearts tightened at the same time. There were still nearly 6 million votes left. They had to get more than 25 million votes to win the final victory. Originally, Shi Jueyuan had thought that getting a quarter of the votes would be a piece of cake. But if they really wanted to repay Guhan for saving their lives, then they might fail miserably. Thinking of this, Shi Jueyuan and the others, who had thought that victory was already in their grasp, suddenly became nervous. There was only 1 minute left. The voting period was about to end, and the votes for the ancient sword and treasure sword swordsman were about to be announced. The 20 minutes finally passed. Even though there were still some swordsmen who had not voted, it was finally time for the ancient sword and treasure sword swordsman to be announced. The first to be announced was the ancient sword swordsman's voting. Ancient sword swordsman's voting is complete. Voting rate, 95%. Agree with Guhan's resignation, 432,100 votes. Disagree with Guhan's resignation, 756,500 votes. As the ancient sword swordsman's votes were added to the total number of votes, the difference between agreeing and disagreeing had shrunk to 3 million votes. The rest of the treasure sword swordsman's votes became very important. There were a total of 5 million votes for the treasure sword swordsman. If Guhan wanted to win, he had to get more than 75 million votes. Otherwise, Guhan would definitely lose. This was equivalent to getting 83% of the total number of votes. Even in the United States before the apocalypse, he had only gotten more than 83% of the votes when he was at his peak. This result made Ji Jueyuan feel a lot more at ease. His heart was no longer beating so hard. Liu Lei's old face kept twitching. If his 8 spiritual swordsmen did not betray him, then the difference between the two choices would be reduced to 4 million votes. Gu Han only needed to get more than 65% of the treasure sword swordsman's support. This was a huge difference from 83%. Treasure sword swordsman's voting is complete. Voting rate, 98%. Agree with Gu Han's resignation, 105,600 votes. Disagree with Gu Han's resignation, 440,000 votes. When Shi Jueyuan heard the 1.05 million votes, he was so excited that he almost cried. He didn't even hear the numbers clearly. However, this was not important. He had already won. Gu Han would not be able to surpass his votes no matter what. He was bound to get kicked out of the position of Sword Pavilion Master. Thinking of the whole process, he had gone through so many hardships and tribulations. So many plans had been resolved by Gu Han one by one. Even the final trump card, the impeachment of the Emperor's bloodline, had gone through a wave and a supplementary document had been produced. If it weren't for the unexpected betrayal of the spiritual swordsman, the person who would start crying tears of joy would be Gu Han. Of course, he was also shedding tears of sorrow. However, all of this was over. The victory belonged to him. He no longer needed to think about the problem of Gu Han. Next, there was a more important thing to think about, which was how to hand over the position of the next Sword Pavilion Master from Liu Lei to his own spiritual swordsman. Come to think of it, who should be the candidate? The best was naturally to let his own clansman, the Mu Shui Sword Spirit, become the Sword Pavilion Master. However, just now, the Mu Shui Sword Spirit was defeated by Gu Han, and her prestige was greatly damaged. The old guys of the other three families would definitely use this as an excuse to firmly oppose the Mu Shui Sword Spirit to represent the families to compete for the position of Sword Pavilion Master. He still had to think of a way to deal with these three old guys and make their candidate lose his reputation. Shi Jueyuan was indeed a scheming guy. Now he had already begun to plan how to deal with his former allies. In a trance, he couldn't even hear the words around him clearly. He only heard the cheers of all the audience, and then vaguely heard Liu Lei's laughter. Wait a minute. Liu Lei actually laughed. Shi Jueyuan woke up from his own world. He looked at Liu Lei and saw that the other party's old face was smiling like an 18-year-old girl. It was so bright and charming. What was going on? Shi Jueyuan hurriedly looked at the three family heads beside him and found that all of their faces were extremely stiff. Their eyes were looking at the results of the votes projected by the projector, as if they had seen something unbelievable. Agree to replace the Sword Pavilion Master, 200,20647 votes. Disagree to replace the Sword Pavilion Master, 203,43041 votes. The number of votes that disagreed to replace Gu Han was actually 320,000 more than the number of votes that agreed to replace Gu Han. The final winner was actually Gu Han. This is impossible. Did I learn mathematics wrong? Shi Jueyuan calculated in a daze. Before the results of the treasured sword grade were announced, I had 96 million votes. Adding the 1.05 million votes, it is indeed 20.02 million votes. Even if the voting rate was 100%, the remaining votes for Gu Han should be 3.45 million. Adding his original 15.94 million votes, it should be 19.39 million votes. How could it be 20.34 million votes? Where did the 950,000 votes come from? Shi Jueyuan calculated in his heart a few times and found that he was right. There was indeed an inexplicable 950,000 more votes. It was this 950,000 votes that caused him to lose and Gu Han to win. Shi Jueyuan couldn't figure out how these 950,000 votes came about. Liu Lei, you still have the cheek to laugh. You cheater. Shi Jueyuan could no longer control his emotions. He jumped out of his seat and stood face to face with Liu Lei. I say, old Shi, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. You called me a cheater. How did I cheat? Tell me clearly. Liu Lei looked at Shi Jueyuan with eyes full of provocation and mockery, which made Shi Jueyuan even angrier. Fine, Liu Lei, let me ask you. How many sword bearers are there in Yuzhang City? Shi Jueyuan asked loudly, 4,536. Lei reported the number without any hesitation. Good, you are telling the truth. With 4,536 sword-bearers, you should have 4,536,000 votes, right? Shi Yuan asked again. No, it's not 453,600 votes, Liu Lei said calmly. You're talking nonsense. How could I make a mistake with such a simple math problem? Shi Yuan felt like his intelligence was being insulted. It was just 4,536 with 3 zeros. How could he get it wrong? Only 98% of the votes were cast. That's a total of 445,000 votes. Don't get too worked up, Liu Lei said with a smile. Shi Yuan was almost angered to death by Liu Lei. Fine, we'll do as you said. I increased the votes by 1,050,000, so you will have 4 million votes at most. It should be 1,934,000 votes. There is a difference of 1 million votes. Let me ask you, where did the 1 million votes come from? You are not cheating. What are you doing? Shi Yuan's stern voice silenced the entire hall. The ordinary people who did not know the total number of sword-bearers did not think there was anything wrong at first, but the sword-bearers who knew the total number of famous sword-bearers were dumbfounded. They had the same question as Shi Yuan. Where did the 1 million votes come from? Out of nowhere. Everyone turned to look at the excited Liu Lei. Unexpectedly, Liu Lei spread out his hands and smiled bitterly. Don't ask me. I don't know why either. This is Bat's calculation. It has nothing to do with me. So everyone looked at Bat, which did not exist here. Could it be that Bat was helping Guhan cheat? If that was the case, then this level of cheating was a little too low. Chapter 684. The impeachment of the Emperor bloodline was finally over, and Guhan won. After learning the source of the 1 million votes, Shi Yuan left the arena with a flick of his sleeve because he had to accept this result. Fortunately, he had left the arena with a flick of his sleeve. If he had seen what happened next, he might have been so angry that he would have vomited blood. It was a pity that the impeachment of the Emperor bloodline could only be used once every 10 years. Otherwise, Shi Yuan would not have minded using it again. Next, Guhan finally passed a relatively peaceful and harmonious period. He knew that the 8 Cities Conference was coming. At this time on Earth, some of the highways had become ruins, but there were still a few highways that maintained their relatively intact state. This was because these highways were still in use. Every 2 or 3 years, there would be maintenance on these highways to ensure that they were in basic use. In the Yanghuang country, there was only one such highway, and that was the Yenyu Highway. As the name suggested, the Yenyu Highway was the highway that connected Yangjing City and Yuzhang City. The Yenyu Highway was a new highway formed by combining parts of several highways from before the apocalypse. The surface of this highway was reinforced with dimensional crystal or powder, so that ordinary Yuan Ku could not cause damage to this highway. This highway was the only highway connecting Yuzhang City and Yangjing City. Without any accidents, it would take about 3 days to reach Yangjing City through this highway. In fact, in general, this time would be extended to about 5 days, because this highway was a highway that needed to be repaired as one traveled. Especially now, when Yuzhang City was surrounded, the Yenyu Highway had been severely damaged. Nearly 45 kilometers of the road had been completely destroyed. After 20 days of emergency repair, this highway had finally been restored to basic smoothness, and the pre-installed material communication between Yangjing City and Yangjing City was once again smooth. At this moment, on the Yenyu Highway, there was a maglev train about 100 meters long traveling at a constant speed. It looked like a train, but this train was traveling on the highway. What was even more peculiar was that this train was not made up of sections, but a single piece, like a car. Moreover, this train was very wide, about 8 meters wide. The outside of the vehicle was wrapped in a thick layer of very tight armor, and it did not even look like a window. It was like an armored car. This was the greatest human transportation invention after the apocalypse, the armored maglev train. Everyone might not think that this was so great. Was it just installing an armored train with a maglev device? Armored trains had already been phased out before the apocalypse, okay? Armored trains had indeed been eliminated before the apocalypse, but the problem was that there was no such thing as yuan coup before the apocalypse. After the Great Calamity, only something as coarse and sturdy as the armored train could withstand the Yuanshan's frenzied attacks. According to practical tests, the latest model of armored maglev trains could ignore the direct attacks of Dragon-class primary dhows and below. His armor could withstand the attacks of Nether-class primary dhows for an hour, Meteor-class primary dhows for 30 minutes, and Universe-class primary dhows for 3 minutes. Therefore, the armored maglev train was still a relatively safe mobile fortress, and it of the transportation of ordinary sword-bearers and ordinary people. Generally speaking, the sword-bearers used their own maglev flying cars to travel. The maglev flying cars were fast and small, and they could travel through all kinds of complicated terrain. At the same time, they could rely on their own speed to get rid of most of the Yuan coup's pursuit. Most importantly, they could be stored in their dimensional pocket, and they were the first choice of transportation for the sword-bearers on small-scale trips. However, the maglev flying cars consumed too much energy, and the cost of long-distance travel was too high. It might be the best choice for small-scale trips. But when it came to large-scale trips, or when there was a need to transport a lot of heavy objects, the maglev flying cars would be useless. At that time, the armored maglev train would be the only choice. This was the same principle before the apocalypse. The lowest cost of long-distance transportation of large quantities of goods was by sea. In places where there was no sea, the most economical way to transport goods was by train. No one would drive their own car to transport goods for someone else. Yangjing and Yuzhong City were the two headquarter cities that had the closest relationship. Every day, there would be a heavy transportation task between the two cities. Every 3 days, a train would depart from the two cities, filled with millions of tons of all kinds of resources. These were all resources that could not be produced in their own cities, so they had to be obtained from the other city. It sounded a little scary. Before the apocalypse, the standard load of a 60-section, 1,500-meter-long freight train was 3,600 tons. Even if it was overloaded, it wouldn't exceed 4,000 tons. How could this armored maglev train, which was only 100 meters long, carry millions of tons of goods? Even if you could bear the weight, how could you pile up so many materials? But in reality, an armored maglev train could indeed carry millions of tons. This was because the materials were not placed directly on the train, but in dimensional iron boxes. A standard 1 cubic meter dimensional iron box had 1,500 cubic meters of space. This was equivalent to expanding the space inside the armored maglev train by a whole 1,500 times. An armored maglev train was equivalent to the load of 1,500 ordinary freight trains. How could it not carry millions of tons of materials? Moreover, the production cost of a dimensional iron box was much lower than that of a dimensional pocket. The resources needed to produce a dimensional pocket could be used to produce 10-dimensional iron boxes, and the space in a dimensional pocket was only 1/10 that of a dimensional iron box. Unfortunately, human technology was still unable to make a breakthrough. The size of a dimensional iron box was limited to 1 cubic meter, and it could not change its shape as it pleased like a dimensional pocket. This limited the use of dimensional iron boxes to transportation. It was impossible for a sword wielder to carry such a hindrance. Originally, the transportation route between Yuzhong City and Yangjing City would have a train every 3 days. But ever since Yeyang Fortress had been breached, there had been no activity on the transportation route for a whole 60 days. Some of the materials between the two cities had become extremely scarce. After a period of repair, the armored maglev train between the two cities was filled with all kinds of urgently needed materials, and it was finally set to move again. Normally, other than freight, the armored maglev train also carried passengers. Some sword wielder who only wanted to go to Yangjing City, some weaker sword wielder, and some ordinary people would choose to take the armored maglev train to Yangjing City or Yuzhong City. They would take up about 20 meters of space in the armored maglev train. This 20 meters of space was standard for armored maglev trains. But this time, there was something special. The passenger compartment of the armored maglev train took up 50 meters of space. This meant that a lot of precious and urgently needed materials were taken up, but there was nothing that could be done about it. This was because this was the reopening of the armored maglev train after 40 days. No one knew what had happened on the highway during these 60 days. Perhaps many of the highways had already been destroyed by Yuan coup. If that happened, the armored maglev train would need to stop and repair the roads. When the armored maglev train stopped was the most dangerous moment. At that time, the defense of the armored maglev train was at its lowest, and it couldn't shake off the slower Yuan coup. Therefore, a large number of sword-wielder were needed to protect the armored maglev train. Therefore, the extra 30 meters of space was used to transport the sword-wielder protecting the armored maglev train. But other than the sword-wielder protecting the armored maglev train, there were also some additional passengers on the train. They were the representatives from Yuzhang City to participate in the 8 Academies Conference. A long time ago, it was mentioned that the academies of the 8 base cities would hold a competition every year. In the beginning, it was just to see how strong the younger generation of the 8 base cities were, so that the higher-ups of the human race could have a sense of what was going on. It was an absolutely friendly thing. But later on, this thing gradually changed. It became a competition between the 8 base cities. They were competing on the potential of their cities, competing on the future of their cities. It could even decide the authority of the 8 base cities' sword committee. As a result, it became a competition that the 8 base cities attached great importance to. Every year, each base city would send their most outstanding students to participate in the competition to strive for victory and glory for their base cities. The August conference should have started a month ago, but because of Yuzhang City, the conference was delayed by a month. This was already a mercy from the Sword Committee. Therefore, when the armored maglev train was put into use again, this group of representatives immediately set off for Yangjing City to participate in the 8 Academies Conference. This group of representatives was led by Yuzhang University's dean, the Tiger Spirit. There were 3 students participating in the competition: Guhan, Ku Rokin, and a female sword wielder called Jin Yujia. It was said that Jin Yujia was originally the 5th candidate, but because the 3rd and 4th candidates had all died in the invasion, Jin Yujia had jumped up. Apart from Guhan, Ku Rokin and Jin Yujia were both sword wielder at the treasure sword level. Originally, Guhan didn't want to participate in the competition. He just wanted to go to Yangjing City. That was because it was somewhat shameless for Guhan to participate in the 8 Academies Conference as a sword wielder at the famous sword level. This was because most of the participants in the 8 Academies Conference were sword wielder at the treasure sword level. If Guhan participated in such a competition, he would be suspected of bullying the weak. However, the Tiger Spirit insisted. Because Yuzhang City had been in the lower reaches for many years, its best result in the past 10 years was only 3rd place. This made the Tiger Spirit very embarrassed. Many people laughed behind his back that he didn't know how to teach disciples, even though he didn't know how to teach disciples in the first place. For the sake of his own reputation, the Tiger Spirit almost knelt in front of Guhan and begged him to participate in the competition. In the Tiger Spirit's words, the 8 Academies Conference was to test the strength of the younger generation of the 8 base cities. It was to see which base city had the most potential. Therefore, there was only one requirement for the participants, and that was that the participants had to be a sword wielder for less than a year. Other than that, there were no other restrictions. Even if they were emperor sword wielder, there would be no problem. Throughout history, many geniuses had participated in this competition as sword wielder at the famous sword level. Guhan wasn't the first, so there was no need to worry at all. Ji Yu-han had already promised the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit to participate in the competition. After the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit persisted, Ji Yu-han no longer refused and agreed. Chapter 685. Brother Guhan, how should I use this sword? Should I use this much strength? On the train, Jin Yujia was in a posture of drawing her sword in front of Guhan. Not to mention, this posture looked decent and could be considered a very standard posture. However, in Guhan's eyes, this posture was full of flaws. At the very least, the other party's lower body was not stable. Her legs were actually walking in a lotus position. It looked quite beautiful, but in fact, it was shaky. Guhan did not need to use much strength. As long as he gently kicked her leg with a sharp weapon, the little girl would fall to the ground in an instant. However, she was here to ask Guhan for advice on swordsmanship, so it was not appropriate for Guhan to do such a thing. He just nodded, pointed out one or two more obvious problems, and said no more. Guhan did not want to talk to her, but Jin Yujia did not. After she realized that Guhan actually did not want to talk to her, she did not leave because of embarrassment. Instead, she moved closer to Guhan, hugged Guhan's hand, and put it between her big breasts. She said in a coquettish tone, "Brother Guhan, don't be so cold. Teach me some swordsmanship. I watched your battle with the ancestral dragon. It was so cool. My dreams are all about your cool swordsmanship. You know my identity in the game." Since she could tell about the battle between Guhan and the ancestral dragon, it was obvious that Jin Yujia knew Guhan's identity as the military governor in the game. There were not many people in Yuzhang City who knew about Guhan's identity. In the beginning, there were only about 1,000 swordbearers. Even if these swordbearers later revealed Guhan's identity, the secret was still relatively well controlled because Liu Lei had issued a clear order to not spread it, and Tomono Kakaze was supervising it. At the very least, no news of it spread on the internet. In reality, there were no more than 2,000 people who knew about it. Hee, big brother Guhan, have you forgotten? I'm also a sword-bearer on the city wall. The moment I fight shoulder to shoulder with big brother Guhan is my happiest moment. If Jin Yujia was like this, any man would feel comfortable and have a good impression of Jin Yujia. Moreover, to be honest, Jin Yujia's appearance wasn't bad. She had some resemblance to Jin Qiaoqiao from before the Great Calamity. However, this girl's utilitarian nature was too strong. Although she displayed an innocent and worshipped Guhan, Guhan could see a different expression between her eyebrows. Obviously, this girl did not approach him simply. She had an extremely strong purpose. For such a girl, Guhan was too lazy to pay attention to her. I'm tired. Guhan coldly spat out these 3 words. Jin Yujia's smiling face revealed traces of awkwardness, as well as some shame and annoyance. However, she quickly concealed the emotions on her face and revealed a tearful look. Big brother Guhan, did little sister say something wrong? Is big brother Guhan angry? I'm not angry. I'm tired. Guhan's reply was still dry. At this time, another girl sitting beside Guhan said somewhat impatiently, "Master is already tired. Big sister Jin, please leave immediately. Master needs to rest." Jin Yujia was attacked from both sides. She finally couldn't keep her face any longer. She stood up from the bed and quickly walked to the door. When she was about to leave, she suddenly turned around and said to the girl who had just spoken, "Miss Lucy Hua, don't think that you're so great. Without big brother Guhan, you're nothing. Do you really think that you became the pavilion lord based on your own ability? What a big joke." After saying this, Jin Yujia flicked her sleeves and left. The door of the room was slammed shut with a loud bang. Lucy Hua, who had been scolded by Jin Yujia, remained silent for a long time before she murmured, "Why did you give this hot seat to me? This position is really not something I can bear. Master, you should give it to someone else. The sword pavilion of the sword pavilion no longer belongs to me. If you really don't want to take this position, then quickly accept a disciple and give this position to your disciple like I did." Guhan said indifferently. Then he pulled out Qingpin from his chest and wiped the saliva from Qingpin's mouth. He then put her under the warm quilt. Ji Yun had already burrowed into the quilt beside Qingpin. However, she wasn't sleeping. Instead, she was carefully reading a book. The cover of the book had the words "The Smiling, Proud Wanderer" written on it. This was the most well-preserved novel of Jin Yong's pre-Great Destruction novels. Even after 1,000 years, it was still very popular among readers. Even Ji Yun, the Sword Maiden, was no exception. On the upper bunk of Qingpin and Ji Yun, the heavenly sword was constantly snoring. Ever since the heavenly sword had been repaired, it had become exceptionally sleepy. In the past, The heavenly sword would not fall asleep no matter how much it drank. However, now, even a sip of wine would cause it to fall asleep uncontrollably. Guhan suspected that something had gone wrong when the heavenly sword had been repaired. Liu Lei had also questioned the swordsmith who had repaired the heavenly sword. However, the swordsmith had sworn on his honor that he had not done anything to the heavenly sword. After the heavenly sword had been repaired, it had become like this. Guhan did not have any objections to this. On the contrary, because of this, Guhan had saved tens of thousands of RMB on alcohol every day. It had also made the whole world a lot quieter. The sleeping heavenly sword was the cutest heavenly sword. Go and practice the basic sword technique 10 more times, Guhan said to the grumbling Lu Shihua beside him. Lu Shihua stuck out his tongue, picked up a wooden sword, and stood up. The room Guhan was in was a small room separated from the armored train. It was only 3 meters long and 4 meters wide. The space was very small, and there were even 2 lower bunk beds. There was not much space for Lu Shihua to practice his sword technique. Therefore, Lu Shihua's basic sword technique was very restricted, and he would hit the bed from time to time. However, Lu Shihua did not complain, nor did he complain about anything. He only continued to modify his movement technique, making it more agile and nimble. Seeing this, Ji Yuhan secretly nodded his head. Lu Shihua was indeed an excellent disciple. Lu Shihua was done with the sword technique. Just as he was about to practice it again, there was a knock on the door. "Please come in." The person who came in was none other than Ku Rokin, who had pulled Guhan back at the last moment. "Hey, what a rare guest. You actually came to look for me." When Guhan saw Ku Rokin come in, he was surprised. After the impeachment of the Emperor bloodline, Guhan had visited Ku Rokin 3 times, but he had been rejected. He did not expect Ku Rokin to take the initiative to look for him on the armored train. "I have something to tell you." Ku Rokin did not walk in. He just leaned against the door and looked at Guhan coldly. "That Jin Yujia is from the Liu clan. Her mother is the sword spirit Mu Shui. You have to be careful. Don't get tricked by her without knowing. The sword spirit Mu Shui has a daughter. I remember that she has always been single on the official information," Ji Yuhan said in astonishment. "Jin Yujia is his illegitimate daughter. Other than the Shi clan and the Liu clan, only my father knows about this. That's all I have to say. Goodbye." After saying that, Ku Rokin was about to leave. "Please wait," Guhan said immediately. "I haven't thanked you yet. You don't owe me anything." Ku Rokin shook his head. He had already taken a step out of the door. However, he felt a gust of wind blow past his ear. He took a step back, and the door closed again. Guhan was blocking his way. "Why do you keep me at a distance? I just want to say a word of thanks to you. Could it be that you're afraid of my thanks?" Ji Yuhan said with a smile. "It's just a thank you. Who cares about such a boring thing?" Ku Rokin's voice was a little low. It was completely different from the confident tone of a Chunibya. Since Zhu Wudao's death, Ku Rokin seemed to have changed into a different person. The Chunibya aura seemed to have disappeared from his body. "I care. Without your 1 million votes, I wouldn't be who I am now. Lu Shihua also wouldn't be the Lu Shihua she is now." Guhan said sincerely. "This is what you deserve. You saved my life and Yuzhong City. There are some inside stories that others don't know, but I know very clearly. Without you, the entire Yuzhong City would no longer exist. It was ridiculous that those idiots from the Di Shan sect thought that they were so great. Those old bastards from the Di Shan sect thought that they were great. When Yuzhong City was in danger, they hid in Mount Di and didn't dare to come out. When my father's position was empty, they started to scheme. Even if you weren't the sword pavilion master, I wouldn't have voted for them," Ku Rokin said while gritting his teeth. His words revealed his anger towards Mount Di and the others. "No matter what, I have to thank you," Guhan said again. "I believe that everyone has heard from the conversation just now that on the day of the impeachment of the Emperor bloodline, the inexplicable 1 million extra votes in the Bao Jian group did not come from anyone else, but from Zhu Elvran, who was in front of Ji Yuhan. He was the one who gave Ji Han 1,000,000 votes. So the question was, Ku Rokin was only a sword-bearer. He should only have 1,000 votes. Why did he have 1,000,000 votes? The reason was simple. It was because of his father, Ji Wudao. According to the rules of every base city, when a sword-bearer risked his life for the safety of the base city and prevented a fatal incident from happening in Yuzhang City, the descendant of the sword-bearer would enjoy the same treatment as the sword-bearer himself for 3 years. Ku Rokin's father, Ji Wudao, had saved the lives of thousands of sword-bearers on the Plum Ridge. As Ji Wudao's son, Ku Rokin naturally enjoyed the treatment of a sword-bearer at the Legend of Sword Realm for 3 years. There were many aspects of this treatment, including welfare, food, accommodation, and, of course, the right to vote. Therefore, when Ku Rokin voted, he actually enjoyed the right to vote as a sword-bearer at the Legend of Sword Realm. Sword-bearers at the Legend of Sword Realm had 1,000,000 votes, and he had cast 1,000,000 votes. That was the origin of Guhan's 1,000,000 votes. Without Ku Rokin's support, Guhan would have been defeated that day. If you really want to thank me, please answer a question for me. Ku Rokin looked at Lu Shihua. Why did you pass the position of cabinet master to her? Because. Before Guhan could answer, the armored train suddenly came to an emergency stop. Lu Shihua lost his balance and fell onto the bed. Only Guhan and Ku Rokin seemed to have violated the law of inertia. They didn't move even when the train came to an emergency stop. Oh no, stop the train. Something must have happened outside. I have to take a look. Ku Rokin rushed out without hesitation. Guhan shook his head and followed him. Chapter 686. What's going on? Guhan and Ku Rokin got off the armored hover car together. They saw quite a few sword wielders getting off with them. They were all surrounding the front of the train, poking their heads out and pointing. They didn't know what they were doing. The road ahead has been completely destroyed, one of the sword wielders said. Ji Han's figure flashed and appeared in front of the train. Sure enough, the highway overpass had been broken. Looking around, he couldn't see where the other end of the broken bridge was. Ji Han could see at least 3 to 4 kilometers away at a glance, which meant that the destroyed highway was at least more than 4 kilometers away. About 12 kilometers of the highway has been completely destroyed. A sword wielder suddenly flew down from the sky and landed next to Guhan. This was the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit, who was responsible for leading the team. Only Spirit Sword Wielder could fly, so the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit went to check on the damage to the highway. The result wasn't good. A full 12 kilometers of highway had been destroyed. This wasn't a simple repair job. Dean, what should we do next? Do you need my help? Guhan asked the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit. Haha, Comrade Guhan, you've definitely never been on an armored hovercar before. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit laughed. When it comes to repairing roads, even if you want to do it yourself, you won't be able to help much. It's better to leave it to the machines. You guys just need to stay in the train and rest. After saying this, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit flew back into the train. Although Ji Han's knowledge was vast, he didn't know everything like the back of his hand. For example, he didn't know much about armored hover trains. Fortunately, there was information about this in his personal terminal. After looking through it, Guhan finally understood the reason. It turned out that because of Yuan Ku's destruction, armored hover cars often encountered these kinds of road cracks. As a result, all the armored hover cars produced in the future were equipped with an automatic road repair system. This was a large road repair vehicle that was attached to the front of the armored hover car. Under normal circumstances, this vehicle was installed in a resource metal box. Whenever the road was damaged, it would be installed in front of the armored hover car. After pouring in the pavement materials, the construction vehicle could automatically repair the damaged highway. As long as there were enough materials, even a highway that was hundreds of meters long could be repaired. Digging holes in mountains and building bridges in rivers, he was omnipotent. Because the highways were often destroyed by Yuan Ku, the armored hovercraft had to repair the roads in addition to being used for transportation. Repairing the 12-kilometer-long highway was not difficult, but the biggest problem was that it would take time. The repair speed of the construction vehicle was about 1 km per hour, which meant that the armored hovercraft would have to stay in this area for the next 12 hours, unable to move quickly. Once it was attacked by Yuan Ku, it would have to defend with all its might. There was no way to escape. Fortunately, Yuzhang City had already anticipated this situation, so they had prepared 5 times more sword-bearers than usual to protect the armored hover train. There was nothing more to say. All the sword-bearers returned to the armored hovercrafts. However, the armored hovercraft's 8 radars were all turned on, carefully scanning everything within a 100-kilometer radius. Under the scanning of these radars, except for a few rare types of Yuan Ku, all Dragon class and below Yuan Ku had nowhere to hide. At the same time, all the observation windows of the armored hovercraft were opened. There were 10 sword-bearers taking turns to observe the situation outside through these windows. Once they found anything out of the ordinary, they would immediately report it. For safety's sake, the conductor also ordered the train's dimensional protection system to be turned on. Although this dimensional wall protection system was smaller than all the dimensional wall protection systems in Yuzhang City, it was still a genuine dimensional wall protection system with 4 million energy values. This amount of energy points might not be able to withstand a few attacks from a universe-level Yuan Ku, but it could serve as a warning. There wouldn't be a situation where a universe-level Yuan Ku would be able to get close to them without them noticing. All in all, the armored hovercraft's defense system was very complete. Unless they encountered a universe-level Yuan Ku, they would be able to last 5 to 6 minutes. Even if they couldn't defend, they would still have a chance to escape. "It's okay, rest well." After returning to his room, Guhan faintly said to Lucifer. After that, he closed his eyes and laid on the bed, as if he had already fallen asleep. "Master, Senior Ju's question just now." Lu Shihua recalled the question Ku Rokin had just asked, and her heart palpitated. 20 days had passed since the impeachment of Emperor Bloodline. During these 20 days, Lu Shihua had been thinking about this question all the time, but she didn't have the guts to ask Guhan. It wasn't until today, when Ku Rokin asked this question, that she finally couldn't suppress her curiosity and asked Guhan. After the impeachment of Emperor Bloodline was finally announced, Guhan suddenly won with 1 million votes. Lu Shihua was cheering for her master. Guhan suddenly pulled Lu Shihua to his side. As he patted Lu Shihua's head, he announced to the Yuzhang City audience through the live broadcast, "From now on, I, Guhan, will resign from the position of Sword Pavilion Master and pass the position to my disciple, Lu Shihua." "What?" Hearing Guhan's words, everyone, including Liu Lei and Lu Shihua, was dumbfounded. What did that mean? Didn't you, Guhan, win? Why are you resigning? This is one of the 2 highest positions in Yuzhang City, the dignified Sword Pavilion Master. How many people would risk their lives to get this position, and you're resigning just like that? More importantly, you said you would pass the position to Lu Shihua. Who is this Lu Shihua? Since Lu Shihua is your disciple, and you are a famed sword-bearer, according to common logic, isn't your disciple a treasured sword-bearer? He might even be an ancient sword-bearer. Guhan ignored the crowd's discussion and pulled Lu Shihua to face him. Solemnly, he asked her, "Lu Shihua of Yuzhang City, are you willing to take over the position of Yuzhang City's 27th Sword Pavilion Master from me?" Hearing Guhan's question, Lu Shihua instinctively wanted to reject it. However, when she saw the determination in Guhan's eyes, she could not bring herself to reject it. Instead, she nodded and said, "I'm willing." For Lu Shihua, it felt like he was saying these words at a wedding. Thus, in the dead silence, Lu Shihua successfully took over the position of Sword Pavilion Master and became the 27th Sword Pavilion Master of Yuzhang City. She was also the first person in the human world to take over the position of Sword Pavilion Master as an ordinary person in the past 1,000 years. "Why do you think?" Guhan did not directly answer Lu Shihua's question. Instead, he asked her a question. Lu Shihua stuttered for a long time but could not say the second word. "Do you think I'm purposely making those old guys from Mount Emperor angry?" Guhan said what Lu Shihua was thinking. "Do you think you're just a tool for me to vent my anger?" Lu Shihua did not speak. Her silence was a tacit agreement. "Whatever you think. You're right, but also wrong. If you really want to know the answer to this question, wait until the day you become an Emperor Swordbearer. I'll tell you then. Guhan closed his eyes again. Jendi. These two words were completely illusory to Lu Shihua. Only one sword emperor could be born out of 100,000 sword bearers. How could she, Lu Shihua, become one of these 100,000 sword bearers? This was simply impossible. Master, I feel like I'm a joke now. Everyone on the forum is scolding me. They say I'm the most useless sword pavilion master since ancient times. They even said a lot of nasty things. Master, please take back your words. I really can't be the sword pavilion master. I've been in the sword pavilion for 10 days, and even the attendants didn't look me in the eye. I'm a complete joke. Lu Shihua's eyes were filled with tears when he said this. Under Guhan and Liu Lei's coercion, she had stayed in sword pavilion for 10 days. She had taken over all the work in sword pavilion. These 10 days were an unforgettable experience for her. In these 10 days, no one had ever taken the initiative to speak to her, and no one had even looked at her. It was as if she was staying on an isolated island in the middle of the sea, and this island was only the size of a foot. All she could do every day was stand on the island and be exposed to the sun. These 10 days of living had exhausted her, and she screamed herself hoarse. You're a joke now. However, when you become an Emperor Sword level sword wielder, this joke will no longer be a joke. It will become a myth. Do you understand? Lu Shihua could only nod. However, she really did not understand. According to the plot of all novels, within the 12 hours of waiting in the armored levitating train, there would definitely be Yuan Ku attacking. Then, there would be a fierce battle. The main character would perform bravely and defeat all the Yuan Ku, ushering in the climax of the plot. Unfortunately, things did not develop according to this plot. After 12 hours, when they woke up, everything was normal. The broken highway had also been repaired. Of course, this period of time was not peaceful. It was said that the sword wielder in charge of guarding killed more than 400 Yuan Ku. However, none of these Yuan Ku were above dragon level. There was no need for Guhan to do anything. However, it was worth mentioning that the highway's road surface was still very badly damaged. Along the way, most of the time was used to repair the highway's road surface. When they were halfway through the journey, a whole 4 days had passed. There were only 4 days left before the octagon of the 8 academies. The roaring tiger sword spirit had already prepared 2 countermeasures. Once it discovered that there was a large section of the road in front of them that had been destroyed, it would immediately bring Guhan and the others to Yangjing City in an even faster levitating flying car. The roaring tiger sword spirit's preparations were not in vain. On the 5th day, it discovered a section of the road that was more than 20 kilometers long. However, the roaring tiger sword spirit's second countermeasure could not be used. The culprit who had destroyed this section of the road was currently fighting in front of them. If this had happened before the apocalypse, this scene would have been like a Chinese TV series with maximum realistic effect. Ultraman Tyro vs Ultraman Savin was a little excited just thinking about it. Chapter 687. It's actually an Ultraman. This kind of Yuan Ku hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. At the intersection of the highway, Guhan and the howling tiger sword spirit stood together, watching the earth-shattering battle between the Yuan Ku. I don't know how many hundreds of years it has been, but this is definitely the first time I've seen it in my life. This is the legendary Yuan Ku Ultraman. It's really huge. The tiger roar sword spirit clicked its tongue in wonder. It was also amazed by Ultraman, a Yuan Yang that only existed in legends. Even if there were frequent fights between Yuan Ku Ultramans, logically speaking, Yuan Ku Ultramans of the same race should be relatively united. However, the battle between the 2 Ultramans was extremely fierce and tragic. The battle between the 2 Ultramans was definitely a battle of fists and flesh. Every punch could cause the surface of the opponent's body to wrinkle, as if the opponent's skin was beaten into a leather case. Occasionally, a fist would not hit the opponent's body but hit the ground instead, creating a deep pit that was more than 10 meters deep. This was definitely the full strength of the Ultramans. What was even more obvious was that the two gems on the two Ultraman's bodies were flashing at the same time, and they were even making beeping sounds that sounded like an alarm. Anyone who had some understanding of Ultramans would know that this meant that the energy in the Ultraman's body was already less than 30%. Once this alarm stopped, the two Ultramans would return to their human form and completely lose their ability to fight. These two Ultramans are at least 60 to 70 meters tall. Looking at the two Ultramans that were fighting, the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit guessed. Ultraman Tyler, 53 meters tall, weighs 55,000 tons, moves at Mach 1, jumps up to 600 meters, and has a wrist strength of more than 160,000 tons. Facing the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit's question, Guhan silently answered, "Oh, there's information about Ultraman Tyler in the personal terminal? Why don't I know about it?" The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit asked curiously. "There's no information about him in the personal terminal. It's hidden in my memory. Ultraman Tyro is a free person. According to the agreement between us and the free people, we can't store any information about the free person other than their appearance. At least, we can't store it in something that's visible like a personal terminal," Guhan replied indifferently. "Oh, I understand. There are no such things in the open, but there are still things in the dark." The Tiger Roar Sword Spirit curled its lips. "I didn't expect one of these two Ultraman to be Ultraman Tyler. This is a little troublesome. What should we do? Should I wait here for them to finish fighting, or should I help Ultraman Tyro?" Ultraman Tyro was a free spirit, which meant that Yuan Ku had his own free will, just like Misaka Mikoto. He also belonged to the Freedom City, but he was very active during a certain period of time. For about 200 years, Ultraman Tyler had a very good relationship with humans. He would help humans fight on various occasions and protect their safety. He was one of humanity's best friends. However, for some unknown reason, Ultraman Tyler disappeared from the sight of humans in the blink of an eye. He had not appeared for hundreds of years. If he remembered correctly, this was the first time Ultraman Tyler appeared in front of humans after disappearing for hundreds of years. Let's wait and see. Ultraman Tyler is the leader of all Ultramans. It shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with an Ultraman that's a head shorter than him. Guhan thought about the description of Ultraman Tyler's personality in the information. Ultraman Tyler did not like others to help him if it was within his capabilities. Hence, Guhan said so. Although the two Ultramans were equally large in size, a closer look would reveal that the Ultraman with two horns on his forehead was a head taller than the other Ultraman with a chain-like ornament hanging on his chest. For Ultramans, height generally determined the size of their strength. Of course, there were exceptions, such as a certain X. However, after observing for a while, Guhan and Tiger Roar's Sword Spirit found that something was wrong. The Ultraman with two horns on his head seemed to be suppressed by the other Ultraman. In the end, Ultraman Tyler was completely suppressed on the ground by the other Ultraman. At the same time, a boomerang-like object on the other Ultraman's head suddenly emitted a dazzling radiance. Then, the boomerang flew out from the Ultraman's head and transformed into a sharp knife. "Oh no, I'm afraid this is an ultimate move. Ultraman Tyler will be in danger. Senior Tiger Roar, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to help." Although they did not know what happened to Ultraman Tyler in the past hundreds of years and why he disappeared, Ultraman Tyler was indeed humanity's best friend. But before Ultraman Tyler disappeared, he was indeed humanity's best friend. He had saved the lives of many human swordbearers, and one of them was even the Sword Emperor. Humans could not watch Ultraman Tyler get injured or even die. Haha, even if you don't say it, I want to do it too. Tiger Roar's Sword Spirit laughed and patted Guhan's shoulder. Ultraman Tyler is a meteor stage Yuan Ku. Since this unknown Ultraman can suppress Ultraman Tyler, then his strength is at least a meteor stage Yuan Ku. Moreover, you can't fly. Student Guhan, you stay here and protect the others. Leave this Ultraman to me. After saying that, Tiger Roar's Sword Spirit flew up and laughed at the Ultraman who was beating up Ultraman Tyler. "You big guy, you found the right person today. You just fell into my hands. There's no one more suitable than you to be my opponent, Yuan Ku." After saying that, Tiger Raw's sword spirit whistled. Then, the armored levitating train shook. A burly, fierce-looking man, oh, no, a woman walked out of the carriage. Matchstick, why did you call me? Can't you see that I'm eating? This burly woman actually called Tiger Raw's sword spirit a matchstick. Although Tiger Raw's sword spirit's body couldn't be said to be fat, it definitely couldn't be said to be thin either. A more accurate description would be that he was relatively strong. The description of a matchstick definitely didn't match him. But then again, compared to this burly woman, Tiger Raw's sword spirit was indeed a matchstick. Hearing this woman call it a matchstick, Tiger Raw's sword spirit didn't get angry. Instead, it smiled bitterly. My ancestor, I found an opponent for you. That's why I called you out in a hurry. I'm afraid that if I don't have this opponent, you won't feel comfortable. Oh, there's actually such a good opponent. The burly woman glanced at the direction where the two Ultraman were fighting. Her face immediately lit up and she shouted excitedly. Not bad, not bad. They're indeed two good opponents. I like to fight with opponents with similar body sizes. Usually, those small Yuan-ku with thin arms and legs would die with a single stomp. They couldn't even move their muscles and bones. This type of body is the best, the best. After saying that, the burly sword lady started to run quickly. Although this sword lady's body was huge, weighing at least 150 kilograms, her speed when she ran with all her might wasn't slow at all. What was even more surprising was that she didn't use her two legs to run. Instead, she ran on all fours like a tiger. Then, this sword lady leaped from the crack in the highway and leaped high into the sky. Her body then started to change violently. Her body instantly became longer and wider, finally turning into an Ultraman-like giant. The Sword Maiden's body, which was originally full of fat, turned into chunks of strong muscles after the transformation. Every muscle was bulging, as if it was filled with explosive power. These chunks of muscles were filled with a sense of beauty. They were more than 10 times more beautiful than those bodybuilders. This sword lady didn't participate in the Miss Bodybuilder selection. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given the first place to anyone else. This sword lady is. Guhan recalled the relevant information about this sword lady. She's the Tiger Soul Sword. How is it? Is it your first time seeing her? Do you think it's very spectacular? Lady Dragon Spring suddenly appeared beside Guhan like a ghost. However, the word spectacular was used to describe a sword lady. It was worth carefully savoring. So she's the Tiger Soul Sword lady. It's really amazing. Guhan nodded. He knew this Tiger Soul Sword. Tiger Soul Sword was considered to be a very young sword lady in the sword lady group. She was also the youngest among all the spirit sword rank sword ladies. The Tiger Soul Ring was a sword lady that was born 150 years ago. Speaking of which, her experience was somewhat legendary. It was said that she was the weapon of the ancestor of China, Kai Yu. It was originally a saber, but there was only a fragment in the ancient tomb that suppressed Kai Yu's head. Looking at the size, it should be a Tiger Soul saber that was equally divided into 5 parts, and this was only one of them. Later, people speculated according to history that when Emperor Huang Shenyuan suppressed Kai Yu the Great, he was afraid that the Tiger Soul Saber would cause trouble again, so he simply divided the Tiger Soul Saber into 5 parts and suppressed it together with its master in Kai Yu's ancient tomb. Even a complete Tiger Soul Saber couldn't become a sword lady. This 1/5 fragment was not taken seriously by the person who discovered it, so he simply gave it to the museum as an exhibit. In the end, the extremely down and out Grandmaster Qing Xing went to the museum to visit and discovered this fragment. Then, he risked universal condemnation to steal this fragment. After studying it for a whole 20 years, he forged this saber fragment into a sword, which was the current Tiger Soul Sword. Later on, the matter of Great Grandmaster Qing Xing was discovered. When the Commission for Discipline Inspection was preparing to lock him up, a famous sword-level swordsman of the Sword Council coincidentally picked up this sword. As a result, this sword began to synchronize. Only then did the world discover that the Tiger Soul Sword was actually a spirit sword-level swordswoman, and that famous sword-level swordsman naturally became a spirit sword-level swordsman. The Tiger Soul Sword also became one of the few natural sword ladies that were born in the hands of humans after the apocalypse. Grandmaster Qing Shing also became a grandmaster from an ordinary sword blacksmith, and his name went down in history. Chapter 688. Perhaps it was because it had stayed with Caillou's head, the Tiger Soul Sword had inherited Caillou's consciousness. It had Caillou's memories and personality, which was why it was as warlike as Caillou. Its combat power was also extraordinary, and it could be ranked in the top 10 among the famed swordsmen. According to the information recorded in Grandmaster Greenhang's memoirs, if one could find the remaining 4 pieces of the Tiger Soul Saber and combine them into one, the Tiger Soul Sword could very likely become an Emperor Swordwoman. Dragon Spring Queen doesn't like the Tiger Soul Queen? Guhan did not hide his feelings and asked the Dragon Spring Queen directly. That woman is an idiot. Only an idiot would like her. The Dragon Spring Queen spat. It was obvious that the Dragon Spring Queen and the Tiger Soul Queen did not live happily together. This was not surprising. The Dragon Spring Queen was a clean-living, hygienic, shrewd and capable swordwoman. She could even play the role of a secretary occasionally. However, the Tiger Soul Queen, you can imagine it yourself. I won't go into detail. Although this woman is stupid, her saber skills are not bad. If you want to achieve greater things, you should take a good look at her saber skills. The Dragon Spring Queen seemed to have said this to Guhan. After saying this, she left Guhan. It was also because of the Dragon Spring Queen's reminder that Guhan began to pay attention to this battle. It was a pity that Guhan had not seen the Tiger Soul Queen's saber skills in a normal battle. This was a one-sided battle. After the Tiger Soul Queen enlarged and entered the battlefield, the outcome of the entire battle had been decided. The Tiger Soul Queen was 100 meters tall after her enlarged form. Compared to the Ultraman who was 50 meters tall and 40 meters tall, she was twice as tall. In front of the Tiger Soul Queen, the 2 Ultraman were like half-grown children. The Tiger Soul Queen grabbed the Ultraman's neck with her hand and the Ultraman was lifted up like a chicken. Then, she flung him a few kilometers away. The unlucky Ultraman had just fallen to the ground and crushed hundreds of trees. Before he could come to his senses, Tiger Soul Queen grabbed his legs and smashed him on the ground like a wooden club. He was completely stunned by Tiger Soul Queen's beating. He didn't even have a chance to fight back. After smashing him about 100 times, the Ultraman's body was lifted over her head and thrown more than 10 kilometers away. It was so far away that it was out of Guhan's sight. Oh, this Yuan Ku's bones are not bad. He is quite resistant to being smashed. He didn't die from this. Guhan could not see where the Ultraman was, but he could not escape the Tiger Soul Queen's eyes. The Tiger Soul Queen's voice was very soft. This soft voice was relative to her size, but when it reached Guhan's ears, her voice was like a huge bell, and it hurt his eardrums. Hey, this guy seems to be about to use some ultimate move. The Tiger Soul Queen showed a surprised expression. Then, in the blink of an eye, a blood-colored broadsword appeared in her hand. The Tiger Soul Queen spun the sword in front of her and blocked it. Then, a dazzling light that was as bright as a pine needle hit the broadsword. This is the Ultraman's ultimate move, the Ultraman's ultimate move. Guhan knew that almost all Ultraman had this ultimate move. They would make a strange pose, and the light of this ultimate move would shoot out from their forearms. The power of this light was not weak. If the physical body was hit by this light, even a U-realm Yuan Ku would be at a great disadvantage. What was even more terrifying was that this light could instantly kill Yuan Ku who was below the meteor realm. It could cause the opponent's body to explode from the inside and turn them into a pile of bubbles. Most of the meteor realm Yuan Ku's attacks could only instantly kill Yuan Ku who was below the dragon realm. However, the puzzling thing was that this light could only be used when the Ultraman was in a critical situation. Unless they were fighting to the last moment or their body was about to run out of energy, the Ultraman would not use this ultimate move even if they died. It was unknown who made this rule. What a powerful ultimate move. After blocking Ultraman's ultimate move, the Queen of Tiger Soul glanced at her Tiger Soul Sword. The center of the Tiger Soul Sword had already been charred black. Oh my god, this is bad. The Tiger Raw Sword spirit in the sky saw the state of the Tiger Soul Sword and slapped its thigh in annoyance. It's over. The repair fee will cost at least 70,000 to 80,000 hero coins. When will I be able to save up 1 million hero coins? It turned out that the Tiger Raw Sword spirit was feeling sorry for its hero coins. F***ck, you actually dared to hurt my spirit sword. I'm going to cut you into 5 pieces and suppress them in 5 different places. It was probably because of her unforgettable failure when she was alive. Whenever the Tiger Soul Queen was angry, she liked to divide her enemies into 5 pieces and suppress them in 5 different places. Unfortunately, she had never been able to do this. It was not because the Tiger Soul Queen was just joking, but because once Yuan Ku was done, he would be sucked away by the dimensional whirlpool. Where would she find the corpse to divide into 5 pieces? Your Highness, please stop. Suddenly, a deep male voice said. From the volume of the voice, it seemed to be a voice that could only come from a creature of the same size as the Tiger Soul Queen. This voice obviously came from Ultraman Tyler, who was lying on the ground. Oh, there's another one here. I forgot. The Tiger Soul Queen turned around and looked at Ultraman Tyler with a strong fighting spirit in her eyes. She grinned and said, "You little guy, quickly get up and fight 300 rounds with me." That opponent just now did not stop because he was straightforward. It was over so quickly. Don't worry, this time, I will definitely preserve 70% to 80% of my strength. I promise to fight 300 rounds with you. Sword Lady, I, Tyler, am not your match. We are all friends and comrades. From the tone of Ultraman Tyler's voice, one could tell that he was a little timid. However, the problem was that Ultraman Tyler had a poker face. Although his tone was timid, his expression did not change at all. He still looked like he was full of fighting spirit. The Queen of Tiger Soul was a stupid person. She could hear the meaning in the other party's tone. Just by looking at the other party's expression, she felt that the other party wanted to fight 300 rounds with her. Therefore, without saying a word, she rushed towards Ultraman Tyler and attacked his chest. Ultraman Tyler was already injured and did not have much energy in his body. How could he be a match for the Tiger Soul Queen? Although the Tiger Soul Queen had held back 70% to 80% of her strength, Ultraman Tyler was still unable to resist. He was directly sent flying and fell on his face. Ayaya, why are you still so weak? I will use half of my strength to fight with you. The Tiger Soul Queen's interest did not diminish. She grinned and was about to attack Ultraman Tyler again. However, this time, before she could touch Ultraman Tyler, she felt that her waist was hugged by something. For a while, she could not move at all. The Tiger Soul Queen looked down and saw that the Ultraman, who had been thrown more than 10 kilometers away, had run back and hugged her waist. Little bastard, you are courting death. How dare you touch my waist? I am still a virgin, do you know that? The Tiger Soul Queen was furious. She picked up her Tiger Soul Sword and slashed at the Ultraman's head. If this slash landed, unless the Ultraman's defense was amazing, he would definitely die. Don't hurt my brother. At the critical moment, Ultraman Tyler got up from the ground again. When the Tiger Soul Sword was less than 100 meters away from Ultraman's head, he used both his hands to grab the Tiger Soul Sword and stopped it. Boy, you have guts. I like it. Although the Tiger Soul Queen said that she liked it, she did not slack off in the slightest. She directly kicked the vital spot between Ultraman Tyler's legs. Then, Ultraman Tyler was sent flying again. He kept rolling on the ground while holding his little brother. He had completely lost his ability to fight. You still won't let go of me. This time, the Tiger Soul Queen did not use her sword. Instead, she picked up her fist, which was the size of 4 rooms and 2 living rooms, and fiercely smashed it on the Ultraman's head. The boomerang on his head was smashed until it was deformed. The 2 salted egg-like eyes were also smashed until they bulged out. The Ultraman, who had been constantly flashing, turned into a beam of light and disappeared. He died just like that. Isn't he a little too weak? The Tiger Soul Queen sighed reluctantly. It was rare for her to have an opponent who could let her play freely. It would be a pity for him to die just like that. No, Ultraman did not seem to be dead. Out of the corner of her eye, the Queen of Tiger Soul noticed that there was a person lying on the ground near her feet. Although the Tiger Soul Queen was not very smart, she had very good eyesight. She could guarantee that there was no human there just now. This is not a human. This person has the smell of a dimensional space. This is a humanoid Yuan Ku. The Tiger Soul Queen quickly distinguished that the unconscious person was not a real human. She raised her foot and was about to step on him as if she was stepping on a bug. No. 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 At the sight of this scene, Ultraman Tyler, who was rolling on the ground while clutching his little brother, let out a shrill cry. It was unknown whether it was because his elder brother was about to die under the feet of the Queen of Tiger Soul that he felt despair, or because his little brother was in too much pain. Ultraman Tyler's miserable cries did not have any effect. In the blink of an eye, the Queen of Tiger Soul stepped on him. To be on the safe side, the Queen of Tiger Soul stepped on him a few times after stepping on him. Ultraman Tyler's salted egg-like eyes turned white and he fainted. He could not maintain his Ultraman form and turned into a human wearing strange leather clothes. Chapter 689. Brother. Higoshi Taro dreamt that he was happily dancing with his brother on the grass. The two of them were talking and laughing, calling each other's names. They were very happy. However, just as he was feeling happy, a pair of black hairy feet suddenly descended from the sky and stepped on his brother's head, turning him and his brother into a pile of meat paste. Brother. Higoshi Taro let out a scream, and then woke up from the nightmare. Through his somewhat hazy eyes, he discovered that he seemed to be lying on a bed, surrounded by 4 or 5 humans who were nervously staring at him. Mr. Taylor, are you okay? A somewhat muscular man asked with concern. I say, Matchstick, what are you worried about? I didn't even step on him. How could he be okay? Said a somewhat greasy female voice. Hearing this voice, Higoshi Taro could not help but shiver. Inexplicably, he thought of that terrifying woman. There was actually a woman in this world who was taller and more terrifying than Ultraman. This was really too scary. All right, stop talking. I still have a few kilograms of beef in my room. It's all good Kobe beef. If you don't eat it, I'll give it to someone else, said the muscular man. There was no doubt that this powerful man was the Tiger Raw Sword Spirit. Then, Higoshi Taro heard a series of thumping sounds, and the whole ground trembled with the sound. Obviously, the greasy woman had run off to eat her Kobe beef. Have the humans already conquered Japan? Hearing the name of Kobe beef, Taro said with some excitement in his heart. No, we humans do not have the ability to reclaim Japan. This Kobe beef is produced by a cattle farm called Kobe, so it is called Kobe beef. This beef tastes really bad, even worse than artificial beef. It's just that the price is a little cheaper, said the Tiger Raw Sword Spirit with a smile. So that's how it is. I thought Kobe had already been conquered. Sigh, it would be great if this was true. I haven't eaten Kobe beef for more than 700 years, Higoshi Taro said with some disappointment. However, he quickly realized that this was not the time for him to be disappointed. The most important thing was to figure out how his brother was now. How is my brother now? Is his body okay? Can it be pieced together? Let him rest in peace. However, he immediately realized that his brother shouldn't have a corpse. It had long been taken away by the dimensional vortex. Therefore, he became even sadder, and 2 drops of hot tears flowed uncontrollably from his eyes. What remains? What do you mean by resting in peace? We didn't die. The Tiger Raw Sword Spirit patted its head. Mr. Tyler, we didn't do anything to your brother. Isn't he lying next to you? Hearing this, Higoshi Taro immediately turned around and saw another man lying beside him. It was his brother, Zhu Xingtuan. Brother. Higoshi Taro threw himself on Zhu Xingtuan's arm and cried for a while. When he finally stopped crying, he turned his head and spoke. His eyes were still hazy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I thought my brother already. All right, you don't have to thank us. We didn't help at all. The Tiger Raw Sword Spirit smiled bitterly. Also, it seems that my sword mistress was more of a hindrance than a help. If not for her recklessness, the two of you wouldn't have been injured like this. I should apologize to you. As for the person who saved your brother, it wasn't me. It was Comrade Guhan. The tiger raw sword spirit pulled Guhan, who had been hiding behind it, to Higoshi Taro and proudly introduced him. It was Comrade Guhan who saved your brother. At the critical moment, it was Comrade Guhan who risked his life to run into the forest and saved your brother's body from under my swordmistress's feet. If you want to thank someone, thank him. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Comrade Guhan. Higoshi Taro held Guhan's hand tightly. I didn't expect that at such a young age, an ancient sword wielder, you would have such courage to save my brother from under that terrifying woman's feet. I, Higoshi Taro, will never forget your great kindness. Ahem. Mr. Taylor, you might be mistaken. He is not an ancient sword wielder. He is a true famed sword wielder, the tiger raw sword spirit reminded him. Hey, don't tease me. I can tell that little brother Jiyu Han is only a little over 18 years old. How could he be a famed sword wielder? Higashikari Taro said, waving his hand. I never lie, The sword spirit tiger still wanted to argue, but Jiyu Han grabbed the sword spirit tiger's arm and said nonchalantly, it doesn't matter what level I am. What's important is that we need to figure out what's going on. If this person is Mr. Tyler's brother, why would Mr. Tyler fight with his brother? First of all, please don't call me by my name, Taylor. That's just my universal name. When I'm in the human world, I hope that everyone will call me by my human name, Higoshi Taro. Higoshi Taro let out a long sigh and explained his situation. It turned out that Higoshi Taro and his Ultraman brethren had been living in seclusion for the past few hundred years. They lived in a small area in Liberty City and lived a peaceful life. However, a few days ago, the Morals and Discipline Committee chair of Liberty City, Misaka Mikoto, returned from the human world and brought Higoshi Taro an important piece of news. She said that she had found traces of a wild Ultraman near Yangjing City. Higoshi Kotaro immediately left the Freedom City that he had been living in seclusion for hundreds of years and went to the area that Misaka Mikoto mentioned. After searching for a few days and nights, he finally found the wild Ultraman. Higoshi Kotaro realized that the Ultraman was actually his older brother, Kevin Ultraman. Unlike Ultraman Tyler, who was already free, Ultraman Savin was deeply invaded by filth, to the point that he didn't recognize Ultraman as his younger brother. Higoshi Taro wanted to bring the name of Zhu Jun, who was also Kevin's human form, back to Liberty City. Naturally, Zhu Jun refused, and the two of them started fighting. In the end, Zhu Jun transformed into his Ultraman form, and Higoshi Taro had no choice but to fight in his Ultraman form. The battle between these two behemoths was naturally destructive. The highway that was more than 20 kilometers long was destroyed during this battle. Not long after the two of them fought, Guhan's armored hover train arrived. What happened after that was needless to say. The story that Higoshi Kotaro told sounded reasonable and normal. However, there were still many suspicious points in it. For example, why did Higoshi Mitsuru Taro suddenly go into seclusion and disappear from the human world? Why did Higoshi Mitsuru Taro say that he was living with his people in the Freedom City? Why did he come out alone instead of bringing his people with him? Did he not understand the principle of strength in numbers? In any case, Guhan felt that the situation was not as simple as it seemed. However, Higoshi Taro had been very kind to humans from the beginning. Even when Queen Tiger Soul beat the two of them up, kicked his little brother, and almost killed his brother, Higoshi Taro did not show any signs of anger. On the contrary, he was very apologetic. With all these kind gestures, Guhan did not want to ask any more questions. After all, he would let the two brothers go halfway through the journey. He could not be bothered with what would happen next. Tyler. Brother. Save me. At this time, the sleeping Zhu Jun suddenly started moaning. It was obvious that this sleeping Ultraman was about to wake up. Big brother. Higoshi Taro's expression tensed up. He extended a finger and tapped Zhu Jun's forehead. A purple light flashed, and Zhu Jun, who had been moaning, immediately stopped moaning. He no longer made any sound and fell back into a state of deep sleep. Mr. Higoshi Taro, what are you doing? The tiger raw sword spirit asked curiously. Sigh, my big brother has just come to this world from the dimensional rift. He is still a Yuan Ku and not a free being like me. I can only seal his soul in his mind temporarily so that he cannot move or transform into an Ultraman. Otherwise, we will be in big trouble. Higoshi Taro explained with a bitter smile. This explanation was very normal and logical. There did not seem to be any problems. Therefore, the roaring tiger sword spirit nodded and said with some gratitude, Mr. Higoshimitaro, you're really thoughtful. We almost forgot about this. If your brother transformed in the train, we would be finished. Our armored train would be scrapped. It's my duty, my duty. Higoshi Taro pinched the corner of Juzhan's blanket. One more thing, one more thing, one more thing. Higoshi Taro hesitated for a long time but did not say what was on his mind. The tiger raw sword spirit was extremely uncomfortable. It patted the bed and said, Higoshi Taro, if you have something to say, just say it. As long as we can do it, we will help you. You are a friend of us humans. Our Yuzhang city was able to survive the invasion thanks to Miss Misaka Mikoto. There is no need for formalities between us. Alright, then I will say it directly. Higoshi Taro took a deep breath. It's like this. I want to help my big brother get rid of the filth in his body, so I need the help of some tools. However, this tool is not in the Freedom City but in Swallow Capital City. Therefore, I hope to follow your train into Swallow Capital City and use that tool to get rid of the filth in my big brother's body. Sigh, what's the big deal? This is a small matter. The tiger raw sword spirit patted its chest. Don't worry, leave this matter to me. I will definitely help you contact Swallow Capital City. Thank you very much. Higoshi Taro immediately thanked the tiger raw sword spirit. Coming out of the room that was temporarily given to Higoshi Taro, Guhan looked a little hesitant. Dean Tiger Raw, there are many problems with this Ultraman Tyler. I'm afraid he is not here with good intentions. You can see that too? The tiger raw sword spirit pursed its lips. I already knew that there must be something wrong with this. Higoshi Taro wasn't being honest. However, it doesn't matter. Since he wants to enter Swallow Capital City, he will behave himself on our train. He won't cause any trouble. I see. Guhan nodded. Let Swallow Capital City worry about this matter. After all, it's not up to us to let Higoshi Taro enter Swallow Capital City. I didn't realize that you are also full of evil tricks. The tiger raw sword spirit smirked and patted Guhan on the shoulder. Looks like I have to apologize to you. I owe you 100,000 vote. Chapter 690. After the incident with Ultraman Tyro, there were no more strange incidents. It took them a whole day to repair the 20-kilometer highway that was destroyed by Ultraman Tyler. However, on this day, there weren't any powerful Yuanshan that came to attack. The ones that came were just some small kittens and puppies. They were easily killed by the other sword-bearers who were in charge of protecting the armored hover train. There was no need for Jiyu Han and the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit to do anything. In fact, Guhan wanted to do something. After all, killing a Yuan Ku would give him some sword essence. Jiyu Han now had 35,000 quarks of sword essence in his body. It might seem like a lot, but it was not enough in Jiyu Han's eyes. No sword wielder would complain about having too little sword essence. Although Guhan wanted to kill the enemy, he was stopped by the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit. In the words of the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit, he and Guhan were both people of status. People of status naturally could not fight over food with these little guys. According to the unspoken rules, when sword-bearers of different levels fought at the same time, the lower-level Yuan Ku had to be dealt with by the lower-level sword-bearers. The higher-level sword-bearers couldn't eat Yuan Ku. Otherwise, the lower-level sword-bearers wouldn't be able to grow. Only the Flood Dragon and Dragon Yuan Ku could be dealt with by the famed sword-bearers. However, because of Guhan's reputation and the fact that he was once the Sword Tower Master, even the Dragon Yuan Ku couldn't be dealt with by Guhan. Only when the Nether and Meteor Yuan Ku appeared would it be time for Guhan to make a move. During the whole journey to Yangjing City, apart from the Ottel brothers, Only the nether Yuan Ku had appeared. The howling tiger sword spirit even took care of Yuan Ku in the name of an elder. Guhan could only watch. Therefore, during the entire journey, Guhan didn't even move his hands, which really made his hands itch. Of course, Guhan did not care about these trivial matters. What gave Guhan a bigger headache were the two troublemakers, Qing Pin and Jiyu Yun. Because he was in a hurry when he set off, he actually forgot to ask when Ma Yun to prepare food for these two little devils. Originally, Guhan didn't care about this small matter, as the armored hover train also provided food. These two little devils wouldn't starve to death. But he never expected that the food on the hover train would be so terrible that even Guhan, who didn't care much about food, couldn't stand the taste. The two little devils, Jiyu Yun and Qing Pin, were naturally even more difficult to serve. On the first day, if it weren't for Guhan stopping them, Qing Pin would have beaten up the unlucky chef. This was also to take advantage of Guhan's inexperience. The howling tiger sword spirit, who often rode the armored hover train, naturally knew what was going on. He had prepared a lot of food in his dimensional pocket, which was said to be made by his maid. Then, he brought the food in front of Guhan to show off, and in the end, all of it went into the shameless Qing Pin's stomach. After that, Qing Pin seemed to be enlightened and didn't pester Guhan anymore. She wandered around the carriage, relying on her cute face and chubby little body to win the favor of many sword-bearers. When such a cute little thing asked you to eat something good, would you be willing to reject her? So, unknowingly, the food prepared by these sword-bearers had all gone into Qing Pin's stomach. The only commendable thing was that Qing Pin didn't eat alone. She would bring back some delicious food every day and share it with Jiyu Yun and Guhan. So, Guhan actually ate pretty well these few days. He had tasted all kinds of delicious food, and the food he ate was even better than at home. But when these sword-bearers realized all of this, it was already too late. More than half of the food in their dimensional pockets had already gone into the stomachs of Qing Pin and the Jiyu family. It was said that they spent their last day eating plain boiled rice or plain boiled noodles. So when these people saw Qing Pin in the future, their first reaction was to tightly cover their dimensional pockets, grit their teeth, and say that there was nothing delicious in their pockets. In any case, after experiencing some interesting things, the armored hover train finally arrived at the heart of the entire human world, the territory of Yangjing Mega Base City, and completed the entire mission without any mishaps. Among the 8 human base cities, the most commonly used ranking method was based on the population of the base city. Yuzhang City had a population of close to 40 million, and was ranked 3rd among the 8 base cities. Of course, Yangjing City was ranked first. According to the 89th World Census conducted 3 years ago, Yangjing City had a total population of 110 million, which was equivalent to the total population of the base cities ranked at the bottom of the list. Yangjing City accounted for 1/3 of the world's population. Since the population of Yangjing City was equivalent to less than 3 times that of Yuzhang City, theoretically, the area of Yangjing City should also be 3 times that of Yuzhang City. In fact, the area of Yangjing City was about 30 times that of Yuzhang City. And Yangjing City was also the only mega base city among the 8 base cities that had an unprecedented 6-dimensional walls. These 6-dimensional walls were known as Yangjing City's 6th ring. At this time, the armored hover train was slowly entering Yangjing City's 6th ring. The armored hover train wasn't directly allowed to enter the 6th ring. Instead, it stopped at a train station outside the 6th ring. According to the rules, the workers of Yangjing City had to inspect the armored hover train inside and out. Only after making sure that Yuan Ku wasn't hiding in the train could they let the armored hover train enter the city. There were no such restrictions for the passengers on the train. As long as the passenger's identity was verified, they could enter the 6th ring and take the special train from the 6th ring to the 4th ring, entering the core of Yuzhang City. However, the Tiger Sword Spirit and Guhan didn't leave the place. They entered Yangjing City first. Instead, they stood on the platform and looked up at the vast and magnificent Yangjing City. Was Yuzhang City big? Big. Very big. Standing outside Yuzhang City, the city walls were at least 100 meters tall. As far as the eye could see, the city walls were a huge arc. Even if you were 4 or 5 kilometers away from the city walls, you still wouldn't be able to see the two peaks of the city walls. The area of Yangjing City was 30 times larger than Yuzhang City. Then how big was Yangjing City? At this time, the train station that Guhan was at was about 10 kilometers away from the city walls of Yangjing City's 6th Ring Road. The city walls that were 300 meters tall in the information were not even as tall as a finger in Guhan's eyes. Even at such a distance, not only could Guhan not see the boundaries of the city walls, but he felt that the city walls were straight, without any curvature. This description might be boring, so let's use data to speak. According to people's calculations, Yuzhang City's diameter was 50 kilometers. If the city walls were all straightened, it would be 157 kilometers long. Yangjing City's city walls were 861 kilometers long, and its diameter was 274 kilometers. This was equivalent to the distance between Beijing and Shijiashuang before the apocalypse. Students who were interested could draw a line on the map, connecting the center of Beijing and Shijiashuang together. Then, using this line as the diameter, they could draw a circle. This would be the city limits of Yangjing City. Reading up to this point, readers might want to ask, just how amazing was the Kunzu who founded Yangjing City in the past? He actually led hundreds of thousands of human survivors to build such a huge city. The construction of the city required steel, stone bricks, labor, construction machinery, and a huge amount of dimensional crystal powder. These materials were piled up together to equal the volume of 5 or 6 Mount Tai. Was this something that hundreds of thousands of survivors who had nothing but their lives could create? This was even more unbelievable than telling everyone that the Great Wall was built in a day. Rome wasn't built in a day, and Yangjing City naturally wasn't built in a day either. In the beginning, the city that was built was only the current first ring road of Yangjing City, which was the size of the core area, and its diameter was only 20 kilometers. Later, as the population of Yangjing City continued to increase, the housing prices in Yangjing City reached an astronomical figure. A small room of 30 square meters could be squeezed up to 50 people. Moreover, such a small area could not satisfy the development of Yangjing City. Therefore, under the leadership of Zhendi at that time, Yangjing City began to expand. The original diameter of 20 kilometers was expanded to 50 kilometers, and a new wall was built. This was Yangjing City's second ring road. After that, Yangjing City's urban construction was a replica of this story. Whenever Yangjing City's strength was high enough to resist most of the Yuan coups attacks, Yangjing City would start to expand the city again. Later on, there would be the 3rd Ring Road, 4th Ring Road, 5th Ring Road, and 6th Ring Road. It was said that Yangjing City was about to run out of people to live in. The Sword Committee of Tianjin City was planning to prepare for the 7th Ring Road. Unfortunately, at this time, there was only an old Haotian Zhendi in their eyes. This plan was only on paper. When Yangjing City had more than 2 Zhendi, it would be the time to restart the construction of the 7th Ring Road. The visionaries of Yangjing City even had such a plan, which was to rely on the continuous expansion of Yangjing City to recapture the entire Earth and expel all the Yuan coups on Earth. According to the estimates of these visionaries, as long as Yangjing City was built to the 36th Ring Road, it would include more than half of the land of ancient Huaxia. Once Yangjing City was built to the 81st Ring Road, it would be able to recover the entire land of Asia. Until the 525th Ring Road was built, the entire world would be recovered by humans, and Yuan coups would be completely expelled from Earth. This plan was naturally an excellent plan, but Guhan felt that when humans realized this plan, Earth would probably be destroyed in the hands of humans. Comrade Guhan, this is your first time seeing Yangjing City, right? The tiger raw sword spirit suddenly let out a long sigh and asked Guhan. Chapter 691. That's right, this is my first time coming here and seeing Yangjing City, Guhan answered honestly. Then you should have some thoughts about it. People who come here for the first time will more or less have some thoughts. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit said again. Facing the Howling Tiger Sword Spirit's question, Guhan was silent for a moment and did not give any answer. What's wrong? Do you not know what to say? The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit laughed. Then let me teach you, what do you mean by Yangjing City is too big? Yangjing City is too spectacular. Yangjing City is really a miracle for mankind. Yangjing City is indeed the core of the human world. For example, you can say these words, they are all extremely appropriate. I have never thought about these things. Guhan suddenly sneered, I am thinking about this question. What question? The howling tiger sword spirit asked curiously. I am thinking, if I were to build such a city, how many years would it take? A smile hung on Guhan's face. All right, stop joking around. The inspection of the armored hover train is almost done. We still have to escort Higoshi Taro into Yangjing City. The howling tiger sword spirit only treated Guhan's words as a joke and did not take it to heart. 20 years. Guhan suddenly stretched out two of his fingers and placed them in front of the howling tiger sword spirit's eyes. I think I will need about 20 years. 20 years. What are you planning to do? The howling tiger sword spirit was stunned at first, then stunned again. Don't tell me you plan to use 20 years to build a Yangjing city. Who can say for sure? Maybe 10 years will be enough. Guhan suddenly revealed an extremely carefree smile. He patted the howling tiger sword spirit's shoulder. Thank you, Lord Howling Tiger Sword Spirit. Recently, I have been a bit confused. I don't know what else to do other than revenge. Thanks to you, I finally know now. After saying that, Guhan turned around without hesitation and walked towards the armored hover train, no longer looking at Yangjing City. What the hell is in this guy's head? Hearing Guhan's words, the tiger's raw sword spirit could not help but shiver. Its evaluation of Guhan in its heart rose by several levels. This guy is either a genius or a madman. But no matter if he's a genius or a madman, the whole world will probably change because of him. I wonder if this change is good or bad. Higoshi Taro and his brother were taken away by the three swordbearers from Yangjing City. Before entering the station, the howling tiger sword spirit had contacted Yangjing City through the communication system and reported the situation of Higoshi Taro and his brother in detail to Yangjing City. This even included their suspicions towards the two Ultraman brothers. Although the howling tiger sword spirit and Guhan both wanted to screw over Yangjing City was home to a large number of humans after all. If there was really something wrong with the Ultraman brothers and they entered Yangjing City because of their concealment, causing destruction and human deaths, the howling tiger sword spirit and Guhan would never be at ease for the rest of their lives. Therefore, the howling tiger sword spirit told Yangjing City the whole story. After that, what Yangjing City wanted to do was their own business. No matter how big the problem was, it had nothing to do with the howling tiger sword spirit and Guhan. As Higoshi Taro and his brother left, the armored hover train was also thoroughly inspected. The entrance gate of the 6th Ring Road of Yangjing City slowly opened, and the armored hover train made by Guhan and the howling tiger sword spirit finally entered Yangjing City. The distance between the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road of Yangjing City was 25 kilometers, covering an area equivalent to 1/3 of the size of Yangjing City. Within such a large area, other than a few settlements, most of the places were not for humans to live in. Instead, they were filled with all kinds of factories, producing all kinds of daily necessities and industrial materials that Yangjing City needed. Not only the 6th Ring Road, but even the 5th Ring Road was in a similar situation, with more factories than humans. Only after entering the 4th Ring Road did they truly enter the world of human habitation. It was densely packed with humans, and the density was only slightly better than that of Yuzhang City. The reason for this was that Yangjing City was just too big, and the walls that Yangjing City needed to defend were just too long. Even if there was a swordsman every 10 meters, they would not be able to cover the entire 6th Ring Road. The biggest problem with Yangjing City's defense system was that once it encountered a large-scale attack by Yuan Ku, the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road would actually be very easily breached. Therefore, not only were there no humans living in the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road, they were also filled with all kinds of war traps and war facilities. The battles that Yuan Ku experienced after entering the city were even more difficult than the battles outside the city walls. This became the biggest advantage of Yangjing City's defense. Relying on the two walls of the 6th Ring Road and the 5th Ring Road, the layers of resistance that covered a distance of more than 50 kilometers, No matter how many yuan ku there were, by the time they reached the walls of the fourth ring road, they would definitely be exhausted. At most, they would only have 30% of their combat power left. This was also one of the conventions of Yangjing City's expansion. After the sixth ring road was built, the fourth ring road, which was originally classified as a battlefield, became the new gathering area for humans. Once the seventh ring road was built, the fifth ring road would also become a place for humans to live. Ever since the sixth ring road was built, there had been more than 10 major attacks. No matter how fierce the swordsmen's battles were, the ordinary humans living within the fourth ring road had never seen a shadow of yuan ku. The armored hover train could only reach the train station within the sixth ring road. After that, the armored hover train was not allowed to enter the area. Guhan had to transfer to the city's high-speed rail at the train station to enter the fourth ring road. Along the way, he saw countless factories. Densely packed roads connected the various factories in an orderly manner. Fully automatic hover trucks continuously transported the processed products from the factories to the next factory, or to the warehouses, or to the cities within the fourth ring road. After sitting on the high-speed rail for about 20 minutes and passing through two thick city walls, Guhan felt as if he had instantly gone from a sparsely populated western town to a densely populated international metropolis. As far as the eye could see, it was densely packed with people. The businesses on the streets were incomparably prosperous, and there was a long queue in front of every restaurant. If it wasn't for the threat of yuan ku, this would definitely be the best era for humans. The high-speed rail could only reach the train station within the fourth ring road. If one wanted to enter the third ring road, second ring road, or even the core area, they would have to transfer to the city rail. The roaring tiger spirit was completely uninterested in the fourth ring road. He called for Guhan to directly transfer to the city rail and enter the core area. However, Guhan refused. After all, it was Guhan's first time in Yangjing City. It was also his first time in a second headquarter city. Everything in Yangjing City was so curious. Guhan couldn't help but want to see the local customs of Yangjing City and taste the unique taste of the largest human city. The roaring tiger spirit guessed Guhan's thoughts. In fact, every person who came to Yangjing City for the first time in Yuzhong City would have the same thoughts. There was nothing to be curious about. In the past, the roaring tiger spirit had experienced the same thing. Thus, the roaring tiger spirit and Guhan parted ways here. Ku Rokin and Jin Yujia also seemed to have no interest in the fourth ring road. They followed the roaring tiger spirit into the core area. Meanwhile, Guhan took Lu Shihua and his precious sword maidens into the streets of the fourth ring road. Although it was his first time in Yangjing City, the people of Yangjing City seemed to be especially enthusiastic about Guhan. Everyone who saw Guhan couldn't help but stare at Guhan's chest. Even in Yangjing City, which had a population of hundreds of millions, there weren't many people who could let a half-grown child hang on their chest. Especially when there were 3 scabbards hanging on Guhan's body. It looked like he was a sword-bearer. Qingpin, the cute little thing, didn't seem to notice the strange gazes of others. She excitedly looked at this brand new family. From time to time, she waved her chubby little hand and directed Guhan to enter one shop after another. She curiously looked at the goods inside. Guhan noticed that these people of Yangjing City, even if they didn't live a good life, had patches on their clothes, and were thin and weak because of hunger. Their spirit was something that the people of Yuzhong City couldn't compare to. No matter how bad the situation of these people of Yangjing City was, whether it was walking or talking, they would always raise their heads high. Especially when they saw Guhan, they would raise their heads even higher and use a voice that they thought Guhan couldn't hear to mock him. Yuzhong dude. This situation wasn't unique. Ji Yuhan had been walking on the street for an hour, and he had heard at least 50 people call him Yuzhong dude. These people of Yangjing City seemed to have a natural sense of superiority. They felt that they were a head taller than the people of Yuzhong City and that Yuzhong City people were born country bumpkins. Guhan didn't care about this kind of talk. His expression didn't change. However, Lu Shihua couldn't stand it. These days of living as a sword-bearer, Lu Shihua, an ordinary person, had gradually developed the temper of a sword-bearer. At the same time, as the master of the Yuzhong Sword Tower, even if she didn't want to take over the position, Yuzhong City had been tied to her personal dignity. An ordinary person dared to talk to her like this. Lu Shihua wanted to slap this snobbish guy and teach him a lesson. I don't care about the Lu Shihua from 40 days ago. Gu Han held Lu Shihua's hand and calmed her down. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. The cautious Lu Shihua had disappeared. She was gradually becoming a real sword-bearer. As the saying goes, one's position determines one's position. Even if one was a beggar, as long as he sat on the dragon throne, he would be an emperor. Even if one was the Jade Emperor, as long as he cut off that thing, he would be a eunuch. Well, this logic was not wrong. Chapter 692. After a few laps, it was almost noon. In other words, it was time to eat. Qingpin, who had eaten plain rice for a day, climbed out of the nursery bag and rode on Guhan's shoulder. Two chubby little hands grabbed Guhan's ears and shouted in a childish voice, "Good Guhan, bad Guhan, stupid Guhan, Qingpin's stomach is hungry. If you don't give Qingpin food, Qingpin will eat you." "Okay, then let's go eat." Guhan grabbed Qingpin from his neck and held him in his arms. At the same time, he began to search for restaurants around, ready to find a place to fill the little devil's stomach. But no matter which restaurant it was, there was a long queue outside, and it would take at least 2 or 3 hours to enter the restaurant. If they had to wait in line, when they entered the restaurant, Qingpin's stomach would probably be flat from hunger. It seems that Yangjing City should really build a new 7th ring road. Guhan thought secretly in his heart. From the number of people in line at the restaurant, it could be seen that the entire 4th ring road of Yangjing City had completely entered a state of full load. Either the 5th ring road was immediately developed, or the 7th ring road was immediately built. "Why don't we buy some bread to deal with it?" Guhan pointed to a bakery next to him and said. This was the only place in the entire Yangjing City where they could buy food without waiting in line. No, bread is worse than nutrient solution. Qingpin doesn't want to eat bread. Qingpin desperately made a fuss in Guhan's arms to express the dissatisfaction in his heart. But Guhan couldn't make no one dare to come out of the restaurant. Jiyu Han was not an unreasonable tyrant. "Young master, hey. Hey, this master, you want to find a place to eat." Just when Guhan felt a little embarrassed, a man in his 30s came up with a smile on his face. "Can you help us find a place to eat?" Guhan asked suspiciously. "Of course, master. Who do you think Jiosanbiaozi am? That's the top tour guide in Yangjing City." Jiosanbiaozi laughed even more happily. "Sir, I'm not bragging. Even if there are twice as many people eating now, Biaozi can still find a good private room for you." "Are you really that powerful?" This time, it was Lu Shihua who spoke. "Sirs, I can tell that you are from Yuzhong City. You don't know that there is nothing impossible in our line of work. Hehe, as long as you are willing to pay, we can serve you." Jiosanbiaozi rubbed his fingers. Even if 1,000 years had passed, the meaning behind this action had never changed. "All right, just say it. How much does it cost to help me find a private room?" Jiyu Han asked nonchalantly. For the current Jiyu Han, money was just a number that he had no concept of. "Sir, you're too honest. It all depended on what kind of restaurant you were looking for. Nowadays, most roadside stalls cost 2,000 renminbi per private room. If it was a bigger restaurant, then it would be at least this amount." Jiosanbiaozi stretched out his palm. "Are you kidding me? A referral fee costs 5,000 renminbi. Lu Shihua covered his mouth in surprise. In Yuzhong City, even if 5 people ordered a table of dishes, as long as they did not order expensive ingredients such as natural meat, it would be at most 3,000 to 4,000 RMB. In Yangjing City, the referral fee for a private room actually cost 5,000 renminbi. Were they being ripped off like monkeys? "Hehe, master, the price depends on where you go. If you can enter the 3rd ring road, then the price will become 10,000 renminbi. If you can enter the 2nd ring road, then it will be another 10,000 renminbi." When Jiosanbiaozi spoke, he still had a smile on his face, but there was a hint of sarcasm in his tone, and there was a sense of impatience in it. It seemed that Jyo Sanbyeozi felt that Guhan did not have much to gain, so he was ready to leave. Hey, then let me ask you, what is the price of a private room in the core area? Lu Shihua found that Jyo Sanbyeozi only mentioned the second ring road and did not mention the price of the core area, so he took it for granted and guessed, is the price of the core area going to be increased by another 10,000? How can it be? How can it be increased by another 10,000? The mocking expression on Jyo Sanbyeozi's face became more obvious. Replying to this young mistress, if you have the ability to enter the core area, you don't need to increase the price at all. There are many empty private rooms there. You can easily find one. You don't need us at all. Why is it like this? Shouldn't the flow of people in the core area be denser? Lu Shihua felt a little incredulous because the core area of Yuzhang City was like this. It was much more prosperous than the streets of the ordinary area. This is because… Hey, why am I telling you this? Jyo Sanbyeozi spat out a few words and patted his thigh in annoyance. Okay, masters, I don't have time to waste with you. You can go find it yourself. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. After that, Jyo Sanbyeozi was ready to leave. Wait. Guhan grabbed Jyo Sanbyeozi's collar. Jyo Sanbyeozi found that he seemed to be tied to a house and could not take another step forward no matter what. Master, what do you want me to do? Jyo Sanbyeozi realized that the person he met was not an ordinary person. He said with a sad face, I don't want to do anything to you. Can you introduce us to a private room? Then let me ask you, where is the best natural meat here? Can you get us a private room? Guhan said calmly. The best place for natural meat. That is naturally Shu Fuji. Jyo Sanbyeozi answered instinctively, but his face immediately turned pale. But master, Shu Fuji's business is too popular, and the price is surprisingly high. I don't have the ability. I know, isn't this the problem of money? I will give you the price of a level 2 ring, you go find me a private room. Guhan gently touched Jyo Sanbyeozi's personal terminal. Jyo Sanbyeozi looked at his personal terminal, and it was full of stars. Okay, master, I understand. I will contact someone for you now. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will find you a private room. The Yangjing people were really interesting. They had to risk their lives just to find a private room. Shu Fuji and Chanel were both the two biggest brands in the natural meat industry, but the business strategies between the two brands were different. Chanel took the large-scale chain system. In the 8 major base cities, except for Lungcheng, they had their chain stores. But Shu Fuji took the boutique system. Only in Yangjing City could there be Shu Fuji restaurants, and there were only 4 of them, one in the core area of the 4th ring, the 3rd ring, and the 2nd ring. The price was naturally much more expensive than Chanel. Chanel's natural pork was 800 yuan per catty, but Shu Fuji's was 1,800 yuan per catty. Even though the price was so expensive, the business of this Shu Fuji was still very good. They were busy every day. All the private rooms were full, and they needed to reserve a seat half a year in advance. It could be seen that Jyo Sanbyeozi was indeed quite capable. With a few phone calls, he led Guhan to the Shu Fuji restaurant in the 4th ring road, and then found a private room for Guhan on the 2nd floor. The decoration of this private room was also very luxurious. This very luxurious was not ordinary luxurious, but it was very luxurious compared to the other private rooms around him. The area was 3 times larger than the other private rooms. Perhaps ordinary people could not even enter the door of this private room. Jyo Sanbyeozi could arrange such a private room for Guhan. His ability was indeed not bad. Sir, we've agreed on the way here. If you don't spend more than 200,000 yuan in this private room, you won't be able to leave this place. My bones will also be broken by someone. Jyo Sanbyeozi wiped the sweat on his head and said. He had specifically told Guhan on the way here that this private room was an incredible private room. He had guaranteed to the lobby manager of Shu Fuji that Guhan could spend more than 200,000 yuan before he brought Guhan here. Don't worry. Guhan's answer was very simple, so simple that Jyo Sanbyeozi felt very guilty. Sir, please order. A waiter in a red cheongsam came in and handed a delicate menu to Guhan. The dishes on the menu were very rich. There were braised pork with soy sauce, steamed pork with rice flour, braised pork with preserved vegetables, gualaro pork, dompa pork, barbecued pork, boiled pork, spicy beef, charcoal roast beef, soy sauce beef, steamed lamb, fire roast whole cow, fire roast whole sheep, roast pig. There were 60 or 70 meat dishes. Just looking at the pictures, Qingpin's saliva was all forced out. Drops of saliva dripped on the menu. He looked at the waiter next to him with a burst of heartache and a burst of contempt. This. Qingpin's little hand clicked a dozen times on the menu, which meant that he had ordered a dozen dishes, and the price had exceeded 30,000 yuan. Although this was a large amount of consumption in Shu Fuji, the waiter's face was still not at all happy. "Sir, our minimum consumption is..." Before the waiter's words were finished, he heard Guhan add a sentence. "According to the dishes that Qingpin ordered just now, give me 20 of each." 20. The waiter looked at Guhan with a dumbfounded face. "Is this person stupid? Give me 20 of each. That's more than 600,000 yuan. Even if you do have such a nouveau riche, there are only 5 of you, and 2 of you are kids. Can you eat so much?" "Sir, the rules of our Shu Fuji are different from other restaurants. You have to pay first to eat here," the waiter said tentatively, and at the same time, he handed over the hotel's public terminal. In the next second, the public terminal flashed, and the waiter saw that more than 600,000 yuan had been transferred to the hotel's account. The waiter knew that he looked down on people this time. He immediately bowed with a smile and rushed out of the private room to urge Guhan to serve the dishes. "Sir, this is it. You're this." Jiao Sanbiao gave a thumbs up. At this time, Jiao Sanbiaozi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing Guhan pay so quickly, Jiao Sanbiaozi knew that the introduction fee of more than 30,000 yuan was a solid profit. "Sir, then I won't disturb your meal. I'll leave first." After that, Jiao Sanbiaozi, who was satisfied, was ready to leave the private room. "Wait." Before Jiao Sanbiaozi could take a step, he heard Guhan say in an unquestionable voice, "Stay and have a meal with me. I still have some questions to ask you." "This, sir, there are some things that we can't say. Yangjing City's water is deep." Jiao Sanbiaozi's voice was a little hesitant, as if he was unwilling to answer Guhan's question. But his buttocks betrayed him because his buttocks were about to sit on the chair. "One question for 10,000 yuan. Guhan's words were straightforward. "That's fine. Ask away." Jiao Sanbiaozi's answer was equally straightforward. Chapter 693. The first question, "I realized that you seemed to recognize that I'm not from Yangjing City at first sight. How did you know?" Guhan asked Jiao Sanbiaozi. "Hehe, from your question, I can tell that you're not from Yangjing City." Jiao Sanbiaozi said with a charming smile, "It's actually very simple. Our Yangjing City hates yellow the most. We can't even be stained with a little yellow. Therefore, the clothes that we wear in Yangjing City never have a little yellow in them. Unlike you guys, your clothes are more or less yellow, so we can recognize that you're not from Yangjing City at a glance." Hearing Jiao Sanbiaozi's words, Lu Shihua subconsciously looked at his clothes and found that there were some yellow stripes on his clothes. He then looked at Qingpin and Ji Yuyun. Qingpin was wearing a Pikachu costume today, and his whole body was yellow. Ji Yuyun was wearing green clothes, but there was a small yellow flower stained with blood on her clothes. Heavenly Sword was tied with a yellow belt, and there was a small yellow ring on the cuff of Guhan's clothes. All in all, their clothes were more or less yellow, and it was very obvious that they could recognize it at a glance. "Why do you hate yellow so much? I read in the book that yellow was the color of nobility before the apocalypse. Why don't you like it?" Lu Shihua asked curiously. "This." Jiao Sanbiaozi hesitated and refused to answer. "She asked you the same as I asked you. What I said still counts." Guhan's words reassured Jiao Sanbiaozi. He smiled flatteringly. "No one knows the specific reason. It's a rule passed down from the time of Kunzu. I heard that when Yangjing City was just established, Lord Kunzu carried out a rectification movement. He taught us Yangjing City people to be noble and get rid of vulgar interests. To be a person with a healthy pursuit. To be a person who stays away from yellow things. Jiao Sanbiao's speech was very rhythmic, which sounded like singing. This was also the characteristic of the people in Yangjing City. It was said that it had been passed down since before the Great Destruction. You see, the sword ancestor personally told us to stay away from yellow items. This is definitely not wrong, so we in Yangjing City hate yellow the most. Yellow is not allowed to appear anywhere. So that's how it is. Lu Shihua was fascinated. He really had to go out more. The outside world was too big, and there were too many new and interesting things. Ji Yuhan shook his head non-committally. As a person who had a deep understanding of history and culture, of course, he knew what the sword ancestor meant by the yellow color. When the sword master carried out the rectification movement, the great cultural destruction had not happened yet. At that time, it was impossible for human beings to not understand the true meaning of yellow, so Yangjing City did not reject yellow for this reason. This bullshit explanation of the sword ancestor's teachings must have been a smokescreen released by someone to cover up the truth at that time. Unexpectedly, this smokescreen had become a fact over time and had been passed down to this day. There's one more question. You just said that the private rooms in the core area are empty. Why is that? Guhan asked again. Hey, what's there to ask? Of course, it's because there aren't many people in the core area. Jiao Sanbiaozi smiled mischievously. Sir, this is not a problem. I won't take your money. I don't have the face to take your money. That's impossible. The core area of Yuzhang City is always crowded with people. Every shop is full of people. It's just that it's a little deserted because of the big attack in recent days. At other times, it's not as deserted as your Fourth Ring Road, Lu Shihua rushed to say. That's the biggest difference between our Yangjing City and Yuzhang City. Jiao Sanbiaozi shook his head. I heard that the core area of Yuzhang City does not restrict ordinary people. Our Yangjing City is different. Only sword bearers or people with citizenship are allowed to enter the core area of our Yangjing City. Don't even think about it. If you're found out, you'll go to jail. Our Yuzhang City also restricts this. Only sword bearers and citizens can live in the core area. There's no difference. Lu Shihua was confused and didn't understand. You're wrong. You didn't understand what I meant. Jiao Sanbiaozi knocked on the table with his fingers. Only sword bearers and citizens can live in the core area. Your Yuzhang City is indeed the same as our Yangjing City. But this is just for living. If it's just for fun, ordinary people can still freely enter and exit the core area. But in our Yangjing City, ordinary people are not even allowed to touch the edge of the core area. Otherwise, they'll be locked up for at least a year. How could this be? Isn't this blatant discrimination? They don't treat people as people. Their sword bearers are so awesome. Lu Shihua still had some consciousness of an ordinary person in her mind. After all, she hadn't become a real sword bearer yet. So after hearing this blatant discrimination, she was a little angry. My lord, you can't say that. Even if those sword bearers invite us in, I don't want to go to the core area. What's there to stay there? It's not as comfortable as the Fourth Ring. Jiao Sanbiaozi sighed. In fact, not only the core area, even between the Second Ring, Third Ring and Fourth Ring, you can't enter and exit at will. If you don't apply for a Third Ring Pass or a Second Ring Pass, you'll have to go to jail if you're caught. Hearing Jiao Sanbiaozi's words, Lu Shihua was stunned again. This can't be. It's a place where ordinary people live. Is there still a restriction on access? What's so strange about this? In a country before the apocalypse, didn't there also have Hong Kong and Macau passes and Taiwan passes? Jiao Sanbiaozi curled his lips. You can also see that Yangjing City is surrounded by rings. The deeper you go, the safer it is. At least wait until all the people in the Fourth Ring are dead before it's the turn of the people in the Third Ring. The people in the outer ring try their best to squeeze into the inner ring to live. For example, if people in the Fourth Ring want to live in the Third Ring, according to the rules, they have to buy a house in the Third Ring. Thus, the price of the third ring has been pushed up to more than 100 times that of the fourth ring, but it's still in short supply because no one is willing to sell their house. The high price of the third ring is not only a trap for the people in the fourth ring, but also for the people in the third ring. If a family in the third ring has a few extra kids, there are only two ways for them to go. They can either buy him a house and let him have a third ring account so that he can live in the third ring justifiably, or they can listen to the management of the council, and the council will allocate a house to this kid in the fourth ring. Everyone in the third ring wants their kid to live in the fourth ring. Everyone is trying their best to buy a house for the kid, but the price of the house has been pushed up by 100 times by the people in the fourth ring. Not many people in the third ring can afford it, so the conflict came. More than 200 years ago, when the fourth ring had just been designated as a residential area for a few decades, the people in the third ring and the fourth ring started fighting because of the housing price. Later, for some reason, the people in the second ring and the third ring also started fighting. At that time, facing the attack of the undead army led by Lik King Arthas, more than half of the swordbearers in Yangjing City were transferred to fight in the Battle of New York. The remaining swordbearers were also defending the city defense of Yangjing City with all their strength, so they didn't care about it. In the end, when the people of the Sword Council reacted, more than 2 million people in the third ring, fourth ring, and second ring had died, which was more than the number of people who died in the Yuan coup attack. Later, after reflection, the Sword Council simply issued an order that from now on, the people in the second ring will be the people in the second ring, the people in the third ring will be the people in the fourth ring, and the people in the fourth ring will be the people in the fourth ring. From now on, only the people in the inner ring are allowed to stay in the outer ring, and the people in the outer ring are not allowed to enter the inner ring. A large number of troops were stationed between the city walls of each ring. Without a reasonable and legal reason to apply for a pass more than 10 days in advance, the people in the outer ring are not allowed to touch the land in the inner ring. Unless your family is lucky and gives birth to a sword-bearer, the people in the fourth ring will stay in the fourth ring for the rest of their lives. If you want to go to the fifth ring, it's not a problem. After finishing this long paragraph, Josanbiaozi felt unbearably thirsty. He drank all the water in the cup in front of him, but still felt very thirsty. But this didn't solve the fundamental problem. The root of this contradiction is still there, and the solution of your Yangjing City is just adding a lock. I feel that sooner or later it will still erupt. Lu Shihua's political awareness was not bad, and he actually saw the fundamental problem. That can't be helped. The population is increasing, but there is only so much land. There will always be people living in the third ring, and there will always be people living in the fourth ring. In the future, the fifth ring will be the same. We can only endure until the day when Yuan Ku completely disappears. At that time, we can live wherever we want. That will be really free. Jiao Sanbiaozi sighed and said, "That's true. I don't know if I can see the day when all the Yuan Ku die." Lu Shihua held his chin, looked at the chandelier in the room and muttered to himself. That day will come sooner or later. Guhan's expression was firm and helpless. But even if that day comes, it still can't be solved. Humans. They always go where there are more people. Before the Great Collapse, the population density of the old Beijing was not much lower than the fourth ring. Why didn't Yuan Ku exist at that time? My lord. You are very knowledgeable. You must be a cultured person who knows history. You even know what happened before the Great Collapse. Hearing Guhan's words, Jiao Sanbiaozi stood up respectfully before Lu Shihua could react. My lord, I, Jiao Sanbiaozi, respect cultured people the most in my life. For today's business, I will give you a 2% discount. Chapter 694. Guhan finally asked Jiao Sanbiaozi some questions, and Jiao Sanbiaozi also answered them one by one. When Guhan's questions were almost answered, the first dish of meat was also served. This was the braised pork with soy sauce, which was Po Qing's favorite. The red braised pork with soy sauce was also glowing, which deeply attracted Po Qing's attention. This heartless little guy immediately climbed out of the nursery bag in front of Guhan's chest and stood directly on the dining table. He directly grabbed the braised pork with his hand and sent it into his mouth. Not to mention Guhan, even Lu Shihua had long been accustomed to Qingpin's appearance when eating meat. He slowly picked up a piece of meat and put it into his bowl, ignoring how embarrassed Qingpin was. Guhan and Lu Shihua could be so calm, but Josanbiaozi and the waitress in Cheongsam could not be so calm. Their eyeballs were almost popping out of their eye sockets. The waitress in Cheongsam was also very knowledgeable. She had seen all kinds of diners in the world, but it was the first time she had seen a cute little guy like Qingpin who could eat so much. "Master, is it okay for the little princess to eat like this? She has already eaten 3 plates. You should persuade her." Josanbiaozi's eyes had not yet retracted. Qingpin had already eaten the 3 plates of braised pork in front of him. This was already the amount of an adult. If a normal child ate so much, he would have already been in the hospital. "It's okay. Don't worry about her. It's just the beginning." Hearing Guhan's words, Josanbiaozi felt that he could not stay here anymore. Otherwise, it would not take long for his worldview to collapse. "Master, you are fine. I will leave first." Josanbiaozi got up and was ready to leave. Don't rush to leave. Eat before you leave." Guhan urged him to stay. "He. Master, the rule of our business is that we must not eat the guests' food. Please, take your time. I'm leaving now." Josanbiaozi did not dare to stay here any longer. He made a bow and trotted to the door. Guhan did not ask him to stay. However, Josanbiao had only taken a few steps when he slowly retreated back. As he retreated, he bowed towards the door and said, "Uncle Bear, may you be blessed like gold." "Uncle Bear." "Yo, Josanbiaozi, you still know that you want me, Lord Bear, to be bless." Although his name was Uncle Bear, the person who spoke did not have the body of a bear. Instead, he was exceptionally thin and looked no different from the old people who did morning exercises in the park. It could be seen that Josanbiaozi was very afraid of this bear. In just a dozen seconds, his face was covered with sweat, and his neckline was wet. He was in a state of extreme tension. "Well, I was wondering who dared to touch the private room I booked. It turned out to be you, Josanbiao." Lord Bear sneered, "Josanbiao, I won't make things difficult for you. Go out and find someone to break his legs. I won't argue with you about today's matter. Beat. Break." Josanbiao was about to cry, "Lord, please don't let me beat others. Can I break my own legs?" "Don't. Why would I want your legs? I want someone else's legs." Lord Bear gently patted Josanbiao's face. "I'll give you 10 minutes. If you can't break someone's legs in 10 minutes, I'll help you kill someone." Ouch. What kind of sin did I commit today? Josanbiao slapped himself hard, and his 2 thick legs began to run for his life, madly running downstairs. "Master, why don't I understand?" Hearing the conversation between Lord Bear and Josanbiao, Lu Shihua felt confused. Why does this person want Josanbiao to break someone's legs? If he wants to take revenge on Josanbiao, wouldn't it be better to break his legs? Guhan pondered for a moment. Breaking someone's legs is much worse than breaking your own legs. "Yo. This gentleman from Yuzhong City is a sensible person. How many times have you come to our Yangjing city? I've never seen you before." Lord Bear's 5 or 6 subordinates sat opposite Guhan. The table in this private room was big enough to accommodate more than 30 people eating at the same time. Including Lord Bear's 4 or 5 people, it was a bit loose. "This is my first time here. Why, did I invite you to sit down? Stand up." Guhan looked at Lord Bear disdainfully, as if in Guhan's eyes, this Lord Bear was like a pile of shit. "How dare you talk to our Lord Bear like this? You're courting death." One of Lord Bear's subordinates pointed at Guhan's nose and scolded. "Hey, who allowed you to talk? Have a good chat with this friend." Lord Bear waved his hand, and his subordinate shut up. "Young man, you're young, but you talk big. You have some guts. Well, seeing that you're not from Yangjing City, I won't argue with you about this." As he spoke, Elder Bear nodded at the table with a smile on his face. "I, Elder Bear, booked this private room. Not to mention the entire Yangjing City, everyone in the 4th Ring Road knows about this. You took my table. What do you think I should do?" Hee hee. Then seeing that it's your first day knowing me, I won't argue with you about what happened today. You can get lost now, don't disturb my meal. Guhan waved his hand, motioning for Lord Bear to get lost. He lowered his head and ate the delicious red braised pork bite by bite. Shu Fuji's braised pork was indeed worthy of being a premium brand. The taste was much better than Chanel's. It was indeed a rare delicacy. F***CK. One of Lord Bear's subordinates couldn't take it anymore. He picked up his hand and was about to do something, but was stopped by Lord Bear again. Young man, I know you're a swordsman, so it's understandable that you're a little arrogant. Lord Bear's tone sounded like he was lecturing his juniors, but this is not your Yuzhang city, the kind of place where a swordsman can cover the sky with one hand. This is Yangjing City, and things in Yangjing City are much more complicated than Yuzhang City. Even if you're a swordsman, I have a way to let you leave here lying down. After saying this, Lord Bear suddenly gestured to his subordinates. One of his subordinates immediately opened the curtains of the window and pointed his personal terminal at the world outside the window. Another subordinate took out his personal terminal and projected an image on the table. This image was the scene outside the window. In the image, Jyosan Byaozi staggered to the outside of Shu Fuji, looking at the pedestrians on the street with a gloomy and hesitant expression. When a thin child passed by, Jyosan Byaozi found his target. He lifted his foot and kicked the little kid to the ground. Then he picked up a big iron bar and kept hitting the unlucky child's thigh bone. In less than 10 seconds, the child's thigh became completely distorted. This was a sign that the other person's leg bone had been broken. Even though such a vicious fight had taken place on the interface, the people coming and going didn't seem to be affected. They walked by indifferently as if they hadn't seen anything. Stop. Seeing this scene, Lucifer finally couldn't bear the anger in her heart. She was about to rush downstairs to stop Jyosan Byaozi's crazy behavior when a dozen police robots with 4 wheels and 2 police pistols appeared. As soon as this police robot appeared, Jyosan Byaozi immediately stopped his beating. He raised his hands with a sad face and squatted on the ground, waiting for the police robot to deal with it. It was hard to imagine that this person with a sad face was the one who beat others crazily for no reason just now. I say, Long. Breaking someone's leg for no reason, what punishment will he receive in Yangjing City? Lord Bear suddenly asked one of his men next to him. Lord, at least 8 years, up to 20 years. The specific number will be decided by the judge. The man named Long replied. Oh, if that's the case, help me pass a message to Judge Sunday. Tell him that this Jyosan Byaozi is not easy. He doesn't need to be locked up for 20 years. He just needs to be locked up for 19 years and 9 months. He should be magnanimous. Lord Bear said with a I'm a good person expression. What was the difference between 19 years and 9 months and 20 years? This Lord Bear was purely here to disgust Guhan. Now you understand why this Jyosan Byaozi would rather break his own leg. Ji Han touched Lucifer's head, who was still in a daze. The child had yet to recover from the scene. How can there be such a ridiculous thing in the world? Is this really the center of the human world, Yangjing City? Lucifer's eyes were wide open, and he said to himself mechanically. Of course this is the center of the human world. Lord Bear smiled and looked at Lucifer lecherously. Little girl, the most perfect law in our Yangjing City is the law. This law is good. We don't have to do a lot of things. The law will do it for us. Don't you think this law is good? Hearing Lord Bear's arrogant remarks, Lucifer was completely speechless. Yangjing City is indeed the center of the human world. Its law is indeed very perfect. It's a pity that this perfect law has fallen into the hands of some people and has become a tool that can be used. Guhan patted Lucifer's head again and said to the triumphant Lord Bear, it seems that no matter how advanced the technology is, no matter how perfect the monitoring of this human terminal is, there will always be loopholes for animals like you to exploit. Okay, whatever you say. So what if I am an animal? Lord Bear stared at Guhan's eyes. Since you are the sword wielder, then Lord Bear will save you some face. Let's have a civil battle. Tell me, how do you want to have a civil battle? Simple. Do you see Lord Bear's 6 subordinates? Lord Bear stared at the empty plates in front of Guhan. You can pick anyone. As long as they can defeat Lord Bear's subordinates, Lord Bear will let them go. You can pay the bill and scram. If you can't defeat them, then that's easy. Lord Bear will let you stay in Shanghai Pass for 2 years. If you can come back alive, then consider yourself lucky. How about it? Lord Bear's face finally revealed a vicious expression. Chapter 695. Shanghai Pass was a name that sounded extremely terrifying to the swordbearers. This was because there was a 40% chance that one would die at the Shanghai Pass frontline. This wasn't a joke. The Shanghai Pass frontline was a huge meat grinder. Every year, more than 1,000 swordbearers would die there. This was because these swordbearers had to face 12 living desolate-grade Yuan Ku. The 12 Zhu Wu of the primordial era, an existence that only existed in legends before the apocalypse, had forcefully descended into this world 200 years ago. Furthermore, it wasn't just one, but all 12 of them. However, they were different from the other Yuan Ku. The other Yuan Ku at least had some awareness of friend and foe. They knew that their main targets were humans. However, these 12 Zhu Wu seemed to have gone completely mad. All living creatures they saw were their targets to kill. Therefore, the first to suffer wasn't humans but the Hero Alliance, whose base was in the northeast of China. This was the base of a small Yuan Ku faction formed by over 100 meteor-grade Yuan Ku. Under the attack of the 12 Zhu Wu, a total of 30 heroes returned to the dimensional vortex. The remaining heroes escaped quickly, fleeing to the Martyr's Palace to seek protection. What followed was the most tragic period for Yuan Ku. It was said that a total of 4 million Yuan Ku died under the 12 Zhu Wu's indiscriminate attacks. If it wasn't for the 12 Zhu Wu's movements gradually approaching Beijing City would definitely be more than happy to see these 12 fellows clean up Earth's trash. Unfortunately, Beijing City was on the path that the 12 Zhu Wu had to pass through. This was a battle that humans couldn't avoid. In order to defeat the 12 Zhu Wu, humans had made a lot of preparations. They had even taken the initiative to send Jendi to negotiate with the other Yuan Ku factions, requesting that Yuan Ku send desolate-grade Yuan Ku to help. In the beginning, Yuan Ku was naturally unwilling. However, humans threatened that if Yuan Ku wasn't willing, they would evacuate all the citizens of Beijing City and allow the 12 Zhu Wu to destroy the city. Then, they would collectively flee to Yuzhang City. This was because, according to calculations, the 12 Zhu Wu's next target was the Eastern Celestial Court. Although humans and Yuan Ku were mortal enemies, humans and Yuan Ku had no choice but to work together to deal with a threat like the 12 Zhu Wu. It was said that Yuan Ku had sent out 4 desolate-grade Yuan Ku, while humans themselves had sent out 3 Jendi. At the same time, humans and Yuan Ku's most elite forces were deployed to set up defenses at Shanghai Pass, forming the legendary Ju Tian Star battle formation. After an earth-shattering battle, humans and Yuan Ku's elites suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, the high-end forces, Jendi and desolate-grade Yuan Ku, did not suffer any losses. However, it was precisely because the high-end forces cherished their lives that the 12 Zhu Wu did not die. They were only trapped by the Ju Tian Star battle formation. They were trapped until now, 200 years later. Humans and Yuan Ku used the entire northeast of China as the formation's base. They used 365 large Ju Tian Star banners as the base and 14,800 small Ju Tian Star banners as the trunk to trap the 12 Zhu Wu. The 365 large Ju Tian Star banners were managed by 365 famous swordbearers, while the 14800 small Ju Tian Star banners were managed by ancient swordbearers. The entire human world had to send so many swordbearers to maintain the existence of the Ju Tian Star battle formation. Sometimes, holding the star banners was not enough. Each swordbearer was responsible for the stability of an area. Any Wu people who appeared in that area had to be killed immediately. If you did not kill them, they would kill you. Every year, more than 1,000 swordbearers would die in this kind of battle, which was equivalent to 1/15 of the total number of practitioners in the Ju Tian Star battle formation. Once the number of deaths in the Ju-Tien star battle formation exceeded 1/10, a fatal flaw would appear in the Ju-Tien star battle formation, and the 12 Zu-Wu would break out of the Ju-Tien star battle formation. At that time, humans did not have the basic conditions to negotiate with Yuan Ku like they did in the past. This was because almost all the Yuan Ku forces had moved their lairs to the void. The 12 Zu-Wu were not interested in going to the void to find the Yuan Ku. They could not wait for the 12 Zu-Wu to break out of the formation and completely destroy humanity. Therefore, to maintain the existence of the Ju-Tien star battle formation, the Sword Committee would allocate quotas according to the number of swordbearers in the 8 base cities every year. Each base city had to send their own swordbearers to Shanhai Pass to maintain the existence of the flesh and blood mill. As the most powerful base city, Yangjing was naturally allocated the most quotas. After all, Shanhai Pass was the closest to Yangjing. Almost half of the quotas were from Yangjing. Every swordbearer who was allocated to Shanhai Pass had to stay in Shanhai Pass for 3 years. After 3 years, a new swordbearer would appear. According to the statistics of the Sword Committee, only about 60% of the swordbearers could survive the 3 years. In other words, the death rate of the swordbearers was as high as 40%. No matter how selfless the swordbearers were, they would instinctively feel fearful when facing the front line of Shanhai Pass. Each of them would rack their brains and do everything possible to avoid being allocated to the front line of Shanhai Pass. Therefore, the Shanhai Pass Management Committee became the behemoth that these swordbearers had to face. As the name suggested, the Shanhai Pass Management Committee was the organization responsible for the allocation of the front line of Shanhai Pass. This organization was formed by the spirit swordbearers in the 8 base cities. Every month, they had to take 1 or 2 days out for a meeting to discuss and argue over the quotas that their city had allocated, as well as to decide which swordbearers should be sent to the front line of Shanhai Pass. Therefore, it could be said that the life and death of the majority of the swordbearers were in the hands of the Shanhai Pass Management Committee. Big Bear used the front line of Shanhai Pass to threaten the swordbearers, which could indeed make the swordbearers feel fearful. So, you have connections in the Shanhai Pass Management Committee? Guhan asked curiously. Listen up, the chairman of the Shanhai Pass Management Committee is our Big Bear's sworn brother. They grew up wearing the same underwear and have a good relationship. As long as our Big Bear says the word, he can immediately send you to the front line of Shanhai Pass. Big Bear's underling shouted aggressively. I don't think so. I'm the sword bearer of Yuzhang City. Your Big Bear can at most threaten the sword bearers of Yangjing City. How can I be threatened? Guhan asked with a smile, looking as if he didn't care about Big Bear's threat at all. You don't understand. Big Bear's underling continued to play the role of a commentator. It's very easy for our Big Bear to send you to the front line. As long as the chairman speaks to the spirit sword level swordbearers of Yuzhang City and agrees to exchange 3 quotas from Yangjing City for 1 quota from Yuzhang City, your committee will definitely push you up without hesitation. It's not like this hasn't happened before. There have already been 3 or 4 ungrateful swordbearers from other cities who were sent to the front line of Shanhai Pass by Big Bear. We don't need one more. The meaning of Big Bear's underling was very simple. When it came to the allocation of manpower, Yangjing City was willing to help Yuzhang City allocate 3 more quotas in exchange for a compromise from Yuzhang City. They would appoint a certain swordbearer from Yuzhang City to the front line of Shanhai Pass. For the sake of their own base cities, almost all the committee members would agree to this exchange. There was no doubt about it. I see. It's indeed a good plan. You're indeed a beast. Guhan's face still looked as if he didn't care. Well, since you've finished threatening me, you can leave now. Don't disturb my meal. What? You don't even dare to fight. Big Bear's anger finally showed on his face. Just as he was about to threaten something, the door of the private room was suddenly opened. Then, waiters in Cheongsam came into the private room with 5 or 6 plates of meat dishes, placing hundreds of dishes on the table. You ordered all these? Big Bear couldn't help but be surprised when he saw so many dishes, but he quickly regained his composure. HMPH, today, Big Bear must compete with you. The 6 of you go up and eat as much as you want. If you can't even compete with others in terms of eating, then you'll be like that idiot Jos Anbieozi just now. If you want to find someone to break his leg, understand? Yes. The 6 subordinates responded in unison. Then, their faces revealed drooling expressions at the same time. They actually encountered such a good opportunity to eat Shu Fuji's natural pork. In fact, even without Big Bear's order, they would have eaten as much as they wanted. As the saying goes, as long as they didn't die, they would continue to eat. Therefore, even without Guhan's consent, the 6 subordinates shamelessly sat at the dining table. They each picked up a plate of braised pork and were about to stuff it into their mouths. You're not allowed to eat Qingpin's meat. Guhan didn't say he would let you eat it. Qingpin stuffed 2 pieces of braised pork into his mouth, then picked up his greasy and chubby little hand. He rushed in front of one of his subordinates like lightning and stuck his little hand directly into his eyes. The subordinate screamed, covered his eyes, and fell under the table. Third bro. Seeing this sudden situation, the other 5 subordinates were stunned. Then, they rushed forward in a flurry, wanting to take revenge for third bro idiot. Idiot. Eater thief. Facing the siege of 5 people, Qingpin nimbly jumped on the table. Every time he jumped, he would jump in front of one person. Then, he would do the same to the first person and poke the other person's eyes until they bled. However, what made people click their tongues in amazement was that when the poor man jumped on the table, he didn't even touch a single plate or knock over a plate of pork. After all, these things would eventually enter Qingpin's stomach. She was reluctant to give up these delicious foods. After a short while, all 5 of his subordinates were lying on the ground with their hands covering their eyes. They were rolling around and wailing in pain. Judging from the small amount of blood on their bodies, unless they regrown their limbs, these 5 or 6 people would definitely be blinded. Good, good, good. Young people are really aggressive. I dug a pit for you, and you jumped in. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.